Ron? Where are you? Where is Ron right now? You done messed up, Ron!
Ron is here. Welcome back, everybody, for more SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult. I have been waiting to be able to share this story with you guys for a long time. Ever since we created the SPTV Foundation. And the foundation was named the SPTV Foundation because the foundation is supported by all of you, the viewers of SPTV. Ever since we created the SPTV Foundation, we have always kind of hoped and known that the people who are able to be helped quietly behind the scenes, when they are ready to speak and when they are ready to tell their story, they will eventually do so. But no one that the foundation has ever helped has ever been pressured and almost never even asked to tell their story, because it's a very personal thing. And usually when I do a video saying, hey, we're helping someone and we need some more funds, people are very generous in donating the funds anyway. And so there really hasn't been a lot of emphasis on asking people to tell their stories. But the story that we're going to share with you today is from a second-generation Scientologist, now ex-Scientologist, YEAGER BEZUIDENHOUT is how you say that last name, folks. BEZUIDENHOUT. And well, let me not give it too much of an intro. Let me just bring YEAGER on and we'll do it together. YEAGER.
Hello, hello.
I'm so glad that we're finally able to do this together.
Me too.
You know, it's funny. Even though there have been a lot of reasons, there's a lot of reasons, things going on behind the scenes why we haven't done an interview before today. You have actually been posting in the Scientology group on Reddit with your story. And even though I don't remember if you've given your name over there, you've definitely shared your photo.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's not like Scientology's unaware.
No, they're definitely aware. They're definitely aware.
Right.
But there's stuff they don't know.
And by the way, for anyone watching right now, I have set this live stream up as a fundraiser for the SPTV Foundation. So where you might normally find the super chat button, when there won't be a super chat button. First of all, when you make a super chat, YouTube takes 30% of that money. When you set up a fundraiser for an approved 501c3, any money that you donate by clicking the donate button, YouTube takes 0% of the money. They also pay the processing fee. So 100% of your money goes to the foundation. And I've set it up as a $10,000 fundraising goal. I'll keep the fundraiser going for the next week, which means anyone watching this video will see the exact same donate button and can hopefully support the foundation. YEAGER, we don't have an outline. We don't have a plan. We don't have an agenda for this interview. It's just so great to talk to you. You know, I like to do these things off the cuff and just organic. So you are second-gen Scientologist. You were born into Scientology. What kind of Scientology family were you born into?
Yeah. So before I go into that, I just want to say at the outset, kind of to everybody, that I'm sitting here today having this conversation with you because of the SPTV Foundation. Without any hyperbole, you guys saved my life. And, you know, just from the bottom of my heart, Aaron, thank you. Thank you for everything.
You're welcome.
So, yeah, like you said, I was a second generation. By the time I was born in 1994, my parents were already both OT5s. So they'd been in for quite some time. And I was born in South Africa. My dad's South African, my mom's American. And then in 2000, or at least in 2001, we moved to America. So big transition there. We talked about kind of whether I go into my whole life story, not really going through my childhood, but kind of jumping into where I first really got involved in Scientology myself. Would it be all right to just jump into that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, you know, being a kid raised in Scientology, I was always exposed to it. We had the tone scale poster board in our house and Scientology books everywhere and stuff. And I did a few courses when I was a kid, but really didn't get exposed to it until I was 16, when I dropped out of high school and decided to go study Scientology full time. So my parents sent me to South Africa, and I studied in Cape Town, which is where I was from originally. And basically for the next 2 years did nothing but Scientology.
Can I jump in real quick?
Absolutely.
So if you guys moved from South Africa to the US in 2001, and then when you were 16, you went back to South Africa to study Scientology, how old were you in 2001?
I was 8.
8.
Yeah.
Okay, so do the math for me. How old were you? Oh, wait. Yeah, when you were 16. Okay, so 8 years later, in 2009-ish, you went back to South Africa.
Exactly. Yeah.
Why did they send you back to South Africa just to study at a Class 5 org instead of in the US?
Cheaper.
Just because it was cheaper.
Considerably cheaper. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. I think an intensive in South Africa was maybe a couple $100, whereas
What?
Yeah.
So South Africa just stealing that business from the American orgs.
And that's a big point of contention in Scientology is how often people will go to either Mexico or South Africa or somewhere because it's considerably cheaper.
Wow. So are you fluent in Afrikaans?
No, I spoke a little bit when I was a kid, but my parents never really spoke to me. Afrikaans people have weird superstitions around learning multiple languages at once. So I never really learned the language. I can understand it okay if I go to South Africa and I hear people talk, but I can't really speak it.
Wow. Okay. It is the best accent, in my opinion. I know that's different than being able to speak it. Okay. So I'm sorry. I interrupted you there, but I wanted to get that piece of the puzzle. So you're 16 years old, back to South Africa, Cape Town of all places.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what were you studying?
So I lived with staff members while I was studying there. And I started out, the first course I did was the student hat. And then I did the PTSSP course. And then I started on the basics. And in the time I was there, I ended up doing the full book and lecture course completion. Wow. And at the time, I was, I think, the youngest person who had done that when I was 16 or 17, I might have been at that time. Mm-hmm. I also concurrently did auditing. So I had already done my Purif at 14. So I did the objectives, which now is called the SRD. And I did about, probably 1,500 hours at least of objectives auditing. Yeah.
That's just receiving?
Just receiving.
Oh my God.
And that's not even the end of it. I later had to redo the SRD and I did another 1,500 hours.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, not fun. Not fun.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I did that in the HGC as well. 1,500 hours.
Some of that was paid.
Yeah, paid.
Not co-audit. Oh my God.
I know. So then I started on my grades, and Cape Town was kind of an interesting situation. They had people from New Delhi, a mission in New Delhi, that were doing internships in Cape Town. So they did all their auditor training, and then they were doing an internship under the senior CS there.
Wow.
So my auditor was actually an intern from New Delhi for all of my grades.
I don't really think of Scientology at all when I think of India. I thought those missions were kind of just mythological.
Yeah, they're very small, maybe like 6-7 staff members, you know.
Oh, so even though they had trainees at South Africa, it's not a big mission.
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
It was just for some reason when I was there, that's how they were doing it, because that was the cheapest place for them to go train.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So for the time I was there, I did the grades 0 through 4. I did basics, book, and lectures, and I did a few ACCs. I think I did up to like the 3rd or 4th ACC, which is, I like to joke. Can I swear? Are we at the point in the video where I can say?
Oh, yeah, you can swear.
Okay. I like to joke. In total, I studied about 10,000 hours of Scientology material. And I like to joke that I have a master's degree in bullshit. So I didn't get any kind of a high school education. And then when I finished all of that, and I came back to America, I quickly joined staff after that in Dallas. And was
Dallas org.
Yeah.
So that whole time you're in Africa, they're having you get a ton of auditing, finish your grades, but truly, and correct me if I'm wrong, the way they're structuring these books and lecture courses, they're not even Div 4 courses, right? I mean, they're technically Div 6 courses. You're just studying Dianetics books any non-Scientologist can buy in a bookstore, right? I mean, other than the ACCs and maybe the Congresses.
Technically, that's correct. Yes, all the basics are actually considered Div 6 courses. But, I mean, those basics are so chock full of the craziest things in Scientology. I mean, let's take the book History of Man, for example. It's all about aliens and implants and a whole track and all that stuff. And I think it's really funny. I'm sure you've seen the TikTok videos where they like answer questions about Scientology with the Scientologists. And they'll say something like, do Scientologists believe in aliens? And they'll go, no, that's crazy. We don't believe in aliens. And I always like to comment with some quote from history of man or something under there. Like, what about this? You know?
Right.
So it's all full of aliens and whole track and all this esoteric nonsense that's considered very high level. But it's for some reason also considered a Div 6 course, which is strange.
It
But
is funny, right?
I can't imagine a brand new person doing the Philadelphia Doctorate course as a Div 6 service.
No. So no auditor training while you were there?
Not while I was there. That came later. Later. Yeah.
Okay, good.
So
all right. So what year did you join staff at Dallas Org?
Let's see. Staff 2012 was when I joined staff.
Okay. When you went to the Dallas Org, was it to join staff right away, or were you a public there for a while?
So I had started dating this girl who later became my wonderful wife. And she was the PPO. She was the recruiter for the Dallas Org. So when I got back to Texas, I spent a few months kind of going back and forth between Austin and Dallas, visiting her. And then eventually she wore me down and recruited me amongst the other staff that were there.
I got it.
Yeah.
So you had never been staff in Austin before joining staff in Dallas? No.
And I knew, as trained as I was on the materials of Scientology, I had never studied anything. Like, I didn't know what the org board was. I had no sense of the management side of Scientology. So it was really my first introduction to all that was when I joined staff, and they took me through staff status 0, where they kind of walk you around the building and show you everything. And then of course the staff training courses and things like that.
Right. So then, forgive me if you already answered this question. So by the time you joined staff in Dallas, you're how old?
Gosh, let's see. I was 18.
18. Okay. 18, didn't finish high school, had earned your bachelor's in bullshit, or your PhD in bullshit in Cape Town, Africa. How far is Cape Town from Johannesburg?
Driving, it's about 12 hours.
Oh, it's far. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's pretty far.
Wow. Okay. And what about what is Johannesburg, even though it's a 12-hour drive, is it actually the closest other org to Cape Town, or is there one closer?
My geography on the may not be. There's another org in this area called Port Elizabeth, which I think is just slightly south of Johannesburg.
Okay. What about Durban?
Durban, again, my geography of the country, I think Durban is slightly north of Johannesburg. So
okay, but if it was only within a couple hours of Cape Town, you'd know, right?
Yeah.
If there was another Scientology org within a couple hours. I was just curious how far spread out these orgs in South Africa are, because there is like 6 orgs or something, plus an advanced org now, which, by the way, did you see they're building a whole new fucking wing onto the advanced org for some reason? Like, they're building an entire new building. There's no way they have any need for this building. I have no idea why they're building it.
Probably just an excuse to raise money.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're 18 years old. You join staff in Dallas. What happens next?
Yes. So I was put on post as what's called the Director of Inspections and Reports, or the DIR-INR, which is basically the head of ethics and justice. So the chief snitch of the org is basically what I was. And like I said, I knew nothing about any of the management side of Scientology. And I had just come from a place where my concept of Scientology was you study it religiously. So when I first joined staff, I was like, okay, let me just get through my full hat. And I went on course. I got through my staff status 1 and staff status 2. And then I started on the DIR-INR full hat, which at the time was an 88-page legal size check sheet front and back. It was insane. One of the lines on the check sheet just said to do the data evaluators course.
Oh, you're kidding me.
I'm not.
Oh my God.
So we basically squirreled that check sheet because a lot of this stuff I wasn't able to actually do since the court, like I was supposed to do the Key to Life LOC as part of my full hat, and that didn't exist. I was supposed to do the Senior Sec Checkers course, and that didn't exist. But I ended up getting through this course, and then it put me in this position where now I suddenly had all this training, and I had read pretty much every policy on ethics and justice, and I felt very equipped to apply Scientology correctly, right? And all of a sudden, I became at complete odds with everyone around me because I realized that nobody else was really doing that. Nobody else even cared to do that. Most of the staff hadn't even finished their staff status 2, actually. And so I was in this weird position where I was kind of at odds with everybody my whole time on staff. I was always arguing with the FR and the LC and this and that and the other. And anytime something would come my way and I would try to apply what I thought was the correct way to apply Scientology, it would get shot down or I would get disciplined or something like that. So staff was very, what's the word I'm looking for? Arduous, I suppose, which it is for everybody. But I never really fit into the group, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And when I first joined staff, Dallas was opened as a CC, if you can believe that.
That's right. I remember there was a CC Dallas. I just didn't know that it was the only org in Dallas. There was never like a regular org and a CC?
Nope, it was just one org.
Wow.
I don't know how they justified it. I think John Travolta visited the org one time, and that's how they justified making it a celebrity center.
So this was, you said, 2012, which in my mind feels like a very recent year. I think I'm much older than you. How many staff members were there?
Yeah, when I joined, we had, and I recall this in detail because, so the org opened in 2009, I believe. And
what does that mean? You mean as an ideal org?
Yes, as an ideal org, it opened in 2009.
Oh, so you joined an ideal org?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good.
Dallas was either the first or the second ideal org to open. I think it was Johannesburg was the first, and then Dallas was the second.
The first three were Buffalo, Johannesburg, and San Francisco.
Oh, okay. Well,
they all launched at pretty much the same time. So Dallas probably came right after that.
Right. Yeah, it must have been shortly after that. And I actually attended the ideal org opening of the Dallas org when I was like 14 years old.
Okay.
And then later ended up being a staff member there.
Okay.
So let's see. I was going to make a point. I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No,
it was
okay.
2012, joined staff. I'd asked how many staff members were there.
Yes. Okay, that's your question. So what I was trying to explain is that the org opened in 2009. And with what the thing they do with all ideal orgs is the actual amount of Scientologists in the field is not large enough to man up the org with the amount of people that they need. So they recruit from all over the country and all over the world. A lot of the Dallas staff members were recruited from California, orgs in California, and they were basically told, yeah, you're just going to be there for like a year, and then you'll get to transfer back to your own org. We just need people there to man it up. Of course, that's not how it went. So everyone who joined staff either signed a 2.5 or a 5-year contract, right? And the time that I got there, when I was put on post as the Dryadar, a lot of those people's contracts were either about to end or had already ended. The person that I replaced handed me a list of like 30 or 40 names of people that were on their leaving staff routing form. Some of those people were still on staff working. Some of those people had left and gone back to California. So when I first got there, there was about 30 staff members total. And again, it was a CC, so there was only one org.
Yeah.
So it wasn't Day in Foundation. We were just one org. And people had weird hours. Within a year of being there, we lost like 12 people.
Wow.
So we were down to about 18 staff.
Wow.
I mean, it was rough. The org didn't make money. If I was lucky, if I made $10 in staff pay a week.
This is why I say people don't understand. Being on staff at a Class 5 org is more difficult than being in the Sea Org, as far as your actual quality of life. You're making even less money than a Sea Org member, except you have to pay for your everything: car, house, food, entertainment, girlfriend, whatever. And you got to work 1 or 2 other jobs outside of the org just to have money to support yourself. And I remember when I joined the Sea Org in LA and I got to ASHO, I was like, fuck, this is easy breezy. I don't got to worry about nothing.
Yeah, 3 hots and a cot. You just get that.
It's so incredible. This is why I love talking to people and getting, certain data points on certain stats at different orgs at different times, because it really shows the decline of Scientology. I mean, in 2002, in Philly, we had more than 35 staff in a relatively small, relatively crappy org building. And, your data point is 10 years later at an ideal org, and you've got less staff than we had in Philly 10 years earlier at a non-ideal org. It's truly mind-blowing.
Yeah, and I think it's good. It would be good to explain how that happens, just to give people some understanding. Because when the org opened, they had I think 150 people. And you go, how do you go from 150 to 30 or 18?
Wow.
And the answer is that when they open an ideal org, they do this huge recruitment drive. So they have a Sea Org mission that comes down, and their whole job is to do nothing but recruit all these people. And they recruit from all over the planet and all over the world, and they spin yarn and they tell lies and they promise the world. And then you get there and it's like, oh, sorry, yeah, all that stuff we promised you, it wasn't true, but now you're stuck here. So it immediately creates this bad faith, you know, kind of bitter taste in everybody's mouth. But now they're stuck there and they're on contract and they're told, well, if you leave, then you're an SP, right? So Kara, my wife, who was the recruiter, was actually a pretty decent recruiter. In her time there, I think she recruited an average of like 6 to 8 people a year, which doesn't sound like a lot.
That's a lot, though.
But it's a lot.
Yes,
it's a lot. She was one of the top recruiters on the planet with her statistics. And I remember one time we had this really funny moment where we had recruited 2 people in 1 week, and we got them both started. And we got a commendation from senior HCO for being the top org on the planet in terms of recruitment for that week.
Because you got 2 people.
Because we got 2 people, and all of us it was this really weird cognitive dissonance moment where we kind of looked at each other like, gosh, if we're the best on the planet.
So for the viewers, senior HCO int would basically be like, you know, basically the HR manager international. And so if they hadn't given you that commendation, you would have had no way of knowing that no other org in the world recruited 2 people that week.
Exactly.
Oh, that is so funny. Oh my God.
I know, because, you know, you go to the events and they show these incredible packed buildings full of people, and there's everyone walking around and people are on course and so on. And you think, man, our org just must be the worst org on the planet. Everywhere else is doing so well.
Right.
And then another funny moment was we actually had a gold, well, no, it was S&P. S&P came and did a shoot, or maybe it was still gold at that time. I don't know, but they came down and did a shoot, and they had us all wearing civilian clothes and walking through the building as if we were public. And it kind of struck me in that moment. I was like, oh, so it's all fake. So this is just propaganda. And then I had to shove that deep down and not think about it too much at the time.
Amazing. You know, just funny anecdote. During the first Golden Age attack at Flag, one of the guys who did the soup training with me, he was from like one of the Mexican orgs, ODD or IFADE or whatever. I think it was ODD. And then they had so few staff, he ends up being the fucking executive director. And then they win the birthday game. And then I see him at Flag next time, and I'm like, holy shit, dude, you guys won the fucking birthday game? And he was almost embarrassed. He's like, it's almost like he knew. He's like, if we won the birthday game, that's bad news because we're a shit small org.
Right.
Okay, we're not doing well, and we're the #1 org in the world. That is not good news. It was almost like he had a withhold that he now knew how fucked Scientology was, you know?
I think that happens to a lot of people in Scientology, and you just have to kind of rationalize it away, you know?
Yeah.
So the next,
so you were talking about how it goes from 150 people down to what it got down to.
Yeah, so it's just a math game. Like you have to, if you have people on a 2.5 year or 5 year contract, I had an Excel spreadsheet at one point, and I worked out how many people we needed to recruit. And there's some policy, I can't remember the name of it. Maybe it's Vital Recruitment Breakthrough, where he says if you need 10 staff members, you've got to hire 40, because that's the rate of people that are going to drop out or not make it. So I put together this whole spreadsheet and realized that we had to basically be recruiting like 60 people a month just in order to maintain our numbers. And that's completely untenable. We had less than 100 public in the entire field on doing services, you know. Dallas actually had a pretty big field. I think we had like 60,000 names in CF, but the actual amount of people that were there doing services was less than 100 a week.
So for the people watching, 60,000, that would basically mean since the day the org opened, probably 50 years earlier. Let me know if you think this is accurate. That basically means 60,000 people had at least bought a book
Or signed a card or done an OCA or had some kind of contact that got them.
Okay, so even if they filled out an OCA test online, they wind up in CF, which means Central Files.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that doesn't even mean they lived in Dallas. Like someone 2 hours outside of Dallas or 3 hours, because Texas is huge and there's still only a relatively small number of orgs, right? Like there's Austin, there's Dallas, there's Fort Worth, right?
Nothing in Fort Worth. There's a mission in San Antonio.
Okay, but there's not even an org in Houston, right?
There's a mission, a tiny mission.
Right, which doesn't even count. Like, it's so crazy that a state as big as Texas has, well, I was going to say less than 5, but it sounds like it might be less than 3 orgs or 3 orgs.
Yeah, I think it's just 2 actually. It's just Dallas and Austin. Everything else is a mission.
That's crazy.
I know.
So, okay, so you take the population of Texas, which is unbelievably large, and you say this is only one of 2 orgs, and in the entire history of the org, only 60,000 people had actually interacted with the org at an introductory level. Like,
yes.
A Scientologist would probably be like, 60,000, that's so much. And you're like, no, it's nothing.
It's nothing. And I would say the majority of those people absolutely hated us and couldn't stand to be called, constantly asked off the call list, or just wouldn't respond at all. So the actual number of people that we had to deal with that were public of the org was usually less than 100 people. And sometimes I would say the average bodies in the shop, which is like what you count as the number of people on service in that week, was typically 40 to 60 people a week on a good week.
Wow. Jeez Louise. I'm making notes of all this stuff as you say it.
Yeah.
40 to 60 biz a week. Unbelievable. Well, when you see me do my estimates of the number of Scientologists in the world, and you see me use like an average number of public per org at about 100 and 150, I mean, this is a perfect example of how I am generously overestimating.
You're being very generous when you do those estimates. Yeah. I think, my kind of headcanon of the number of Scientologists, I think if you could count 18,000 between all the Sea Org, all the staff, and all the public. And I think about a third of those public, which make up about 8,000 of that 18, are under the radar or in some form of leaving. So I really wouldn't be surprised if the total number of Scientologists in the world, including all staff and Sea Org, is less than 18,000.
Wow. It's incredible, right?
It is. Yeah.
So what was the next major milestone in your staff career at Dallas?
Well, so there's one thing I wanted to talk about that kind of happened early on. And this was me. This, I think, will kind of illustrate what it's like to be an HCO as a staff member.
And HCO, for the viewers, is the Division 1. It's HR division. It's where both Yeager and his wife were posted as department heads.
Yes. So there was 2 people that were recruited. The guy's name was Justin. I can't remember his wife's name. And when somebody is recruited, they have to go through a whole slew of tests on the meter. You have to give them what's called an A to J, and then you have to give them what's called a 7A. And if you've heard the term sec check in Scientology, a security check or a confessional, this was kind of, it predated sec check. So before Hubbard came up with the whole confessional procedure, he just had this thing that you're supposed to go through and ask them these questions on the meter. And if they fail, then they're not supposed to be allowed on staff. And
I forget what the 7A check is.
Yeah, it's basically, it's kind of like the A to J, but the questions are a little bit more pointed. You ask things like, have you been sent here? Are you a communist? Are you here to destroy the org? Are you here to obtain sex is one of the questions. It's very pointed, and the procedure for doing it is very strange. It's unlike any other procedure in Scientology.
Okay.
And this guy failed that check. Now, of course, that I don't think that
you're supposed to answer no to those questions?
No. No. Well, here's the thing. I don't believe in the meter. I don't believe in any of that. I don't think the meter works. I think my analogy is like, if I gave you a dartboard and I gave you 300 darts and I said, you need to hit that board one time in 300, you're going to hit it. That's kind of how I see the meter. Is you ask this question and you ask it enough times with enough different variations, eventually that needle is going to move at the right time, and then you take it up as an answer, right? But with this sec check, you do this weird procedure where you ask it. So if the question is, did you steal an apple? You go, did, until there's no reaction on the meter. You, until there's no reaction on the meter. Steal. And then you go, did you steal? And then you go through it again, and then you check it one last time. And if it reads, then the person is supposed to fail the test, right?
Wait, that's the 7A check?
Yeah.
I've never heard of this thing.
Yeah. It's a weird little thing that has very specific procedure. And I illustrate all that to say that it's very hard to fail that check because of the way it's set up. So for someone to fail that check, and I think he failed the question, have you been sent here, right? So I basically wrote on the routing form. I was just doing my job, not thinking anything of it. I was like, okay, well, he failed the 7A, so he's not qualified for staff. I go about my business. Next thing I know, he's on staff status 0. And I was like, wait, what's going on here? This guy, I disapproved him. And the FR, the flag rep, which is a Sea Org member that's posted in the org, basically went behind my back and signed him up anyway. I had problems with this guy from day one. I mean, he was, first of all, he was an alcoholic. He was drinking at the org. This guy had a whole bunch of problems. And I think what I'll do is I'll jump to the end of the story, and then I'll fill in the gaps. The end of this story is that this guy stole the 60,000 names in CF. He printed out, or at least put it on a hard drive, and stole every email, every address, every phone number of the 60,000 people in our CF.
What?
And posted it online.
What?
And this guy had actually, the reason he had come to staff was to be a plant, was to steal this information specifically.
Oh, he really was a plant.
He really was a plant. And my Scientologist brain at the time, man, that made me really double down, because I was like, oh my gosh, the SPs are here. They're trying to infiltrate us. You know what I mean? But so filling in the gaps a little bit, there was all these red flags that was coming up with this guy. Like I found out that he had been showing quote unquote black PR to other staff members, talking to people about that stuff. And there was all these times along the way where first I tried to label him as a type D, which is, gosh, I can't remember what that is. But I tried to hit him with all these different labels, and I was trying to do all this stuff to get him off of staff. And the FR just kept saying no. And the FR was also kind of holding the post of LC.
I was going to say, it's not even the FR's call. It would be the LC's call.
Yeah. So the thing that's weird about HCO and the way this works is anytime you want to issue something official, it has to go through this other person called the LC, who's not in HCO. And they can just veto anything that you put together. So no matter how much work or how much evidence, if the LC doesn't sign off on it, it just doesn't happen. So I basically fought with this guy and with them back and forth for 3 months. And then eventually he ends up stealing all this information. And I think it's such a funny illustration of how incompetent Scientology is. They're so desperate for people that they will take somebody, even if the red flags are so abundant that that's all you see. They'll still take them and put them on staff. And then of course I got in trouble when he blew, because it's out security. So it's my fault, right? Even though I'd been trying to get this guy out of there for months.
Right.
So that was an interesting situation. But I think what I'll jump to next, well, let's see. I'll tell one other story that happened before that. We had a woman in HCO who her post was the DRRAP, which I can't remember what that stands for. I think routing and personnel.
Yeah.
And it's the person over the recruitment.
Right.
But she was not really there very often. Her situation was weird. This was another person that had been recruited by the FR, and it was just this weird thing. And so I was getting pressure from the executives because she wasn't showing up for post. She wasn't showing up. She would just come randomly when she felt like it. And usually she would just sit at her desk and answer emails and play games on her computer, not doing any work. So I went up to her and I basically said, hey, can we talk? And she gets up and starts to leave. And the way the room we were in was set up is there's a big door that leads out of this room. And she's sitting at a desk and I'm standing here. So she gets up and she goes to leave. And I take one step to my left. I didn't touch her. I didn't block her. I didn't stop her from going anywhere. I was just like, hey, can we talk? And she grabbed me by my tie and just starts punching me in the face as hard as she can. I was shocked. She probably hit me 5 or 6 times before I even reacted. I was just like, whoa. And then I was thinking, okay, I'm in a closed room with this woman who has me by my tie and is beating me in the face. What am I supposed to do in this situation? So I untied my tie while she was punching me, and then the tie came off and she fell on the ground, and I just sprinted out of the room.
Was she a big girl?
She was pretty tall. I mean, punches, it was like making squeaky noises when she was hitting me. But it was so
She's
shocking.
clearly prone to violence. Like that's a big step.
Yeah. So then I run upstairs. I went and I found the FR. I told her what happened, and she goes, "Well, what did you do to pull that in?" Which is just the quintessential victim blaming in Scientology, right?
Wow.
So that's just a little thing. But then, so the shit really hit the fan when, let me think of the timeline. So Golden Age of Tech Phase 2, that was 2013. Okay. And Dallas had sent 6 people to Flag for this training. We had sent 1 person as an auditor, and the rest of them were sent as supervisors and word clears. Now, another example of just how Scientology just lies all the time. Every single person we recruited was recruited to be an auditor. Right. A week before they went to Flag, we got a call and we said, "Hey, you need to tell everyone that they're actually going to be trained as supervisors, not auditors."
Right.
And we were like, "What the hell?" And they said, "Well, don't worry. You'll be here for 6 to 8 weeks. They'll do their supervisor training. Then they'll go home. And then you can train them as auditors because now you have a full course room of supervisors, right? No problem." Makes total sense. 6 to 8 weeks became, I think, 12 months of
Wow.
how long they were there. And when they all came back, the Golden Age of Tech 2 event, I don't know if you saw that one.
I was still in good standing, technically as a Scientologist, but not good enough standing to be allowed to go to the event. So
Okay.
I did not go to the event.
Okay. Well, this is kind of another weird idiosyncrasy. When I was on staff, because I was an HCO, whenever we would put on events, I would do security, which basically just means I would stand outside the front door and smoke cigarettes with the other guy in HCO who was also on security. And I realized in retrospect, I did that because when I would try to watch an event, it would cause so much cognitive dissonance in me that I just couldn't do it. I could not sit through an event because it would make me start to question things. So I just did everything I could to avoid watching events.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's weird, right? And it's one of those things where I've heard you talk about it before, where you go like, "Yes, I was a dedicated Scientologist and I fully believed." Well, a great example, you were a fully dedicated Scientologist, but you didn't like auditing, right?
Hated it.
So I was a fully fanatical, dedicated Scientologist, but I hated events and I refused to watch them.
Wow.
And
I was the opposite. I was like, "I love the events. It's all true. It's amazing. This is why I'm here. They revitalized me." And you're like, "Oh, I can't take the lies."
But in my head, I didn't think of it as lies. I just thought, well, I don't know how. I really don't know how I justified it to myself. It was weird. But
I get it. I mean, I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
it made you think. It made you start thinking things that were uncomfortable.
Exactly. So the 2013 Golden Age of Tech 2 event was actually the first event I'd sat through and watched as a staff member. And Miscavige promised the moon. He goes up there and says, "Oh, we fixed everything and all these SPs had messed up the tech and now we've sorted it out. And we're going to be training auditors like we've never had before. And your org's going to be booming and blah, blah, blah." All the usual bullshit, right? So the staff were so hyped for these guys to come back. And they came back. They got set up in the course room. Now we have a fully outfitted course room with word clearer, a supervisor. We had a supervisor for every single course room. So there was a theory supervisor, a practical supervisor, an auditing supervisor, and nobody showed up for course.
Wow.
Nobody showed up. We had all the same usual regular people. And an interesting thing too is 2 of the people we sent to Flag were actually members of the Nation of Islam.
Oh my God. How did that work out?
Not well. They were recruited to be auditors. We sent them as supervisors. When they came back, they were promised that they would get to train as auditors, but that just didn't happen. So within 6 months, I think 6, maybe 8 months, we lost both of the NOIs who were supervisors. We lost our word clear. And I think we lost one of the soups too. So we sent 6 people and we were down to like 3 or 2 within 6 months.
And that was after they spent a year training at Flag.
Yes.
I can't believe 2 NOI people survived 12 months at Flag on the training program, not just as pampered public.
I don't know how, because they were brand new. I mean, all they had done was Dianetics. That was the only
Whoa.
It was bizarre to have sent them.
Wow.
I thought it was strange at the time. I was confused about the NOI thing. At some point, I kind of like, what is the Nation of Islam? And I looked it up on Wikipedia, and it was basically like, oh, it's a cult. And then I was like, why are we aligning ourselves with a cult? That seems weird. You know, like didn't connect the dots. So one of them, her name was Connie, and both of them were just the sweetest, kindest people you could ever meet.
2 women?
It was Connie and I think Joseph was his name. He was a man.
Okay. Man.
So Connie, at some point, her exit or her exodus from staff was her car got broken into and her e-meter got stolen. The org basically treated her as if she had stolen it herself, and were trying to make her pay for this $5,000 e-meter that she had lost. Treated her terribly, and she just stopped showing up. And I couldn't blame her. And then, oh no, his name was Lawrence, not Joseph. I'm sorry, Lawrence. Okay. The story that with Lawrence, and this will kind of tie in, this will segue into the next thing I want to talk about. There was about a year after no, it was less than that. Sometime after the Ideal or the Golden Age of Tech Phase 2 event, we had a mission come down to split the org into Day and Foundation. Oh. This was a thing that had been happening all throughout the West US, and the mission was run by a woman named Erica Zombathy. Do you know Erica Zombathy?
I know Erica. I kind of had a crush on her in the Sea Org, actually.
Oh, really?
Wait. I'm thinking of the other Zombati that worked at Astro Foundation. You're talking about Erica from Middle Management, who was married to Attila.
Attila's wife, yes.
Okay, different person. I did not have a crush on Erica. I take that back.
Okay, yeah.
A lot of Zombatis in Scientology. Kodo was one of my little kid trainee friends at Flag for the first evolution.
Oh, really?
Maybe you don't know.
I know Kodo well. I know Kodo well.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He's still a true believer, unfortunately, I think.
Oh yeah, he's on 7. He's been on 7 for a long time.
Oh, that's so embarrassing.
I know.
Okay, so Erica Zombati comes to split the Organ Day Foundation.
Yes, and that whole mission, dude, was a nightmare. A nightmare. So just to finish up the story with Lawrence, I'll kind of tell what happened there, and then I'll jump into some of the other things that happened with Erica. Lawrence had been off post, which means he wasn't coming and doing his job for quite some time. And Erica had basically said that me and David, who was the senior CS, needed to handle him on coming back to post. So David and I sat down and had a meeting with him, and we spoke for a good 2 hours. We listened to all of his concerns. We you know, to use a Scientology term, we acknowledged and validated what he was going through. And we got him basically to agree to come back and be on post with a few stipulations, okay?
Yeah.
We're basically ready to shake hands. Erica comes into the room. She sits on the table with her back to Lawrence. She looks at David and I, and she says, "Have you gotten this N-word back on post yet?"
Directly in earshot of this guy. She's calling him the N-word.
Sitting on the table. So we're sitting at a table. He's on the other side of it. She sits on the table with her back to him, looks at David and I, and says, "Have you gotten this N-word back on post yet?"
Oh my God.
Lawrence, to his credit, he stood up. He said, "David Yeager, thank you very much for your time." And he left and never saw him again. And I don't blame him.
Oh my God.
And that, just to illustrate, that is how Erica behaved across the boards. There was another guy. His name was Santos, and he was one of the missionaires, and he was the head of, he was the CO Latam. So he was the,
like COCLO?
I guess so. Yeah, COCLO Latam or whatever I'm not exactly sure where he was, but he was over Latam in some capacity.
Okay.
Sweet guy. And he was the only one on the mission who spoke Spanish. Erica would refer to him as all kinds of racist pejoratives, ones that I won't repeat, for Hispanic people. She called him, she would refer to anybody that was Mexican as a cockroach, and she called him the cockroach whisperer. That's how she referred to this guy. At one point, she put him on a Greyhound bus to Houston and said, you have to go out there and recruit people, and you have to get yourself a ride back. She sent him with no money, and he had no cell phone. And so he basically got off the Greyhound bus, had to walk 3 miles to the mission, and then had to figure out how to recruit himself to get himself back to Dallas. He accomplished all that. When he comes back, she just tears him down. She says, all your recruits are bad, and these people are stupid, and you're so stupid. I mean, it was just like unbelievable. Another thing she did was, I had a friend he was the guy that I replaced as the Durinar. He became the Has. His name was Matt. She printed out his life history and read it at a staff meeting in front of the whole org, just to belittle and degrade him. It was crazy, dude. And they were very successful at recruiting. They recruited about, I think, like 60 people. But what happened is they were there for 4 months. They recruited all these people. It was atrocious. They were lying to them. And then all of a sudden, they put us all in uniform. They had us stand on the stage. They took a picture of us. They made the executives sign a statement saying that they were now fully responsible for the staff, and it wasn't the mission's fault if they left, and blah, blah, blah. They left, and literally a week later, when the staff members got their first paycheck, 40 of those 60 people walked off post.
Wow.
Because they had promised them that they were going to be making $300 to $500 a week. They got their first paycheck and it was $10. And they said, oh, you guys lied to me and we're out of here. And so they were gone. Like I said, we had 18 staff before the mission came. 6 months after the mission came, we were down to 15. We had less people because every single person they had recruited left. And now we were supposed to be 2 orgs. So we had 15 people to split between Day and Foundation. And it was just, it was just nice.
Let me ask you a question. I want to get into the weeds on this a little bit, but I won't take too much time on it. Because I'm, in the Philly org, we were also one org, no Day Foundation. And there was a lot of full-time staff members. There were a lot of people that were both Day and Foundation. In the case of Dallas, what did they do about staff members who wanted to be full schedule?
Okay. So I don't know that we had anybody that wanted to be full schedule, but they had a lot of people that worked full schedule. The way that they did that is they said, well, there was some policy that said you can't be on the same post on Day and Foundation. You have to be on a different post. Excuse me. So my wife, Kara, she was the Has Foundation and the Reg Day.
Interesting.
Working, 100 plus hours a week.
Stupid.
I know.
How stupid. So they would let someone be staff members for both orgs, just different posts.
Different posts. Yeah.
How inefficient.
Incredibly.
The whole time I was at Asho Day, having come not only from Flag, but also from Philly, Flag doesn't have Day Foundation. The whole time I was on staff at Asho Day as a SEERG member, I was like, this is the stupidest fucking thing ever. We're 2 orgs operating in the same space, completely inefficiently, fighting over the same public, fighting over the same stats, fighting over the same revenue. We could be just one org and actually be the biggest SEERG org in the world. Instead, we're 2 small orgs that are fighting with each other all the time and getting less done.
I don't know if it's a bug or a feature. I don't know. Yeah. I think it's supposed to be that way. So because and I'm sure you'll relate to this. I spent most of my time as a staff member arguing with other staff members.
I know.
I barely got any work done. It was just arguing with people, or stupid things. Like, I'll give you an example. Okay, so I had to turn in all the stats every week, right? Yeah. And the PES, her name was Linda, and bless her heart, sweet woman, incredibly smart. Like, she was she had a doctorate in bioengineering or something like that, but just kind of daft, if that makes sense. She was brilliant, but not very well. I'll tell you. So I found out I had been reporting this particular statistic every week, which was the number of people on extension courses. Okay. And this was a cumulative number. And the number was something like 350 people, let's say. And so every week that number would either go up or would go down. Okay. So if more people signed up for a course, then that number would go up. If people finished a course, then that number would go down. So the math, you'd have to do a little bit of math and figure out how many people there were. And at some point, for some reason, I went up and I asked her, I was like, hey, can you give me the list of everybody that's on an extension course? Because I was trying to do a board of review or I was trying to do some aspect of my job. And I go up there and I ask her for this and she goes, what do you mean? I was like, well, you've been reporting 350 people on extension courses. Can you give me the list of all those people? And she's like, I don't have that. Like, what? What do you mean you don't have that? I don't have that list. I just have this number. And I was like, what do you mean you just have a number? I was like, how do you calculate your stat every week? She's like, well, when I joined staff, it was like 200. And I've just been adding or subtracting somebody every week.
It seems more than daft. I mean,
I had to do a 5-year stat correction.
Oh my! This wasn't even a confession of hers. She was just explaining it to you. Like, why did you think I was doing anything else?
As if I'm the idiot for even asking the question.
She's like, I thought the stats were supposed to go up. Hello.
So every week she had been false reporting her statistic because she had no idea what it was based on.
Oh my God!
Just an example of the inefficiency, right? So. Let's see. So the mission came, the mission was a disaster. The mission left. And at this point, I'm trying to think of exactly what the timeline is. My wife got pregnant. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here. So when she got pregnant, she was working as the Dureg Day and the Has Foundation. 2 posts that by themselves, like the Dureg is responsible for all the income in the organization, and the Has is responsible for all the staff members and all the ethics and all the everything. So it's not an easy post in any regard. To be on both of them at the same time is just ridiculous. And they had come out with this. This was around the time when the Chase wave had started forming. Oh, actually, this is a good segue into that.
Right.
So what happened was LA org started a training program for Regs. And
this was in what year?
This was 2014.
Okay.
2014. So people started going to LA for this internship, this program, and then they came back and they were like gangbusters, like just regging all this money, getting so much money in. And it was like heralded as this incredible successful program. What we didn't know at the time that the success was basically just credit and bank fraud. But so this program, this internship that was being run, and then at some point management issued this this new program that was supposed to revamp CF and regging. And we were ordered to put 2 people into the CF. We were ordered to put someone as a folder manager or a CFIC or something like that. And we were given a target of every reg was supposed to make $50,000 a week. And I think we had 3 regs. I don't think we ever hit that target. Not once.
Right.
But that was the level of pressure. So if Kara had a good week and she got $15,000 in, it was still way less than her target. So she was in this constant state of being like, oh, you're always down stat. Even if the stats were up, they treated her like the stats were down because she wasn't hitting her 50,000 a week target. Mm-hmm. And she went and did that training program at LA and got trained on how to do all that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. No, this wasn't just a natural thing that happened. They were specifically training people on how to do credit and bank fraud.
Wow. No, I knew people went to LA. I didn't know Kara was one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's incredible. So like before the Chase Wave era, what would have been like a good week of GI? And before the orgs were split into Day and Foundation, like what would have been an average decent week of GI that people were relatively happy with?
A good week would have been like $12,000.
$12,000. And at $12,000 income, staff pay might be about
maybe $15 if we're lucky.
Oh, okay.
People
were still happy with that.
Well, I mean, it was better than nothing. You know, we were just happy to get paid. There were some weeks where we got like nothing or a couple of bucks. You know,
right?
Nobody was able to live on their staff pay. That's just not how it works.
Right.
Um,
Okay, so then fast forward to Day Foundation orgs,
Okay,
Chase Wave, fraud happening. What's all of a sudden income is up to what levels?
Okay, so this is what started happening. The FBO started trying to reg the staff members. And I remember there was a specific guy, his name was Brian, sweet guy. I actually recruited him, and he was he lived in Athens, Texas, which is like middle of nowhere. We drove out there, we got him, brought him back on staff. This guy had worked at Walmart for enough years that he had retirement from Walmart. And he had some kind of payouts. I can't remember exactly what it was, but this guy basically had about $100,000 sitting in the bank. He was set up like no staff member could ever be set up, in that he didn't have to work another job. He was full time. So he was day and foundation, and he was able to work without having money as an issue. Well, Lindsay, the FBO, found out that he had this cash, and she went after it, and she took every penny.
Jesus.
Signed him. He basically, as a staff member, he paid for all of his auditing up to clear, and he paid for all of his training. So I think it's a $35,000 package at the time is how they were selling it for each. So he paid $70,000 for this.
Wow.
And as far as I know, they never delivered it to him. But that's what started happening. So after this Chase Wave and after this thing, they started going after the public, but then they also started coming after the staff, and they started getting staff credit cards to pay for their auditing. And the way that they were presenting it was like, well, I know that the staff are supposed to get their auditing for free, but that takes longer because we don't have a staff auditor. So if you just pay for it now, then this will get you your auditing, and then you'll be so able that you'll just be able to make all the money as a staff member. And obviously, if you're getting audited as a staff member, then you'll be better at your job, so the org will do better, right? That's kind of the way they pitched it.
Wow.
But it caused so many problems. And this was still the early days where it really hadn't gotten bad. It gets bad later. But there was this incident that happened when my wife was 7 or 8 months pregnant, where there was a mission that came to the org, and it was an ethics mission. And this was after the splitting mission. The ethics mission came because nobody was hitting their targets on recruitment, and nobody was hitting their targets on registration. And one of the guys on the mission was a guy named Joey. I'm sure you know him. He was in the Air Force or something before he joined the Sea Org, and he was plastered on recruitment posters all over the base. Maybe you knew him, maybe you didn't. Anyway, it was Joey, and
he might have been from middle management.
Okay, yeah.
And if he was, I probably didn't know him.
Fair enough. So it was Joey, and then there was a German woman whose name I can't remember. And they came down, and their whole approach to things was, we're going to give you guys a too gruesome,
right? Which
is a concept in Scientology that basically, if you don't achieve your targets, then we're going to punish you so bad that it's too gruesome to you would do anything not to have this punishment. And basically, I came into the org one day. It was strange. I wasn't supposed to be there for a couple more hours because I was on foundation, but I just had a feeling I needed to go into the org. I walk upstairs, walk out of the elevators, and I see my 7-month pregnant wife on her hands and knees scrubbing the grout with a toothbrush because she didn't make her target that week. I went up to her and I said, babe, what are you doing? And she goes, well, I didn't make my target. And I said, sweetie, stand up. I stood her up. I took her. I sat her down to the chair. And then I found Joey and came very close to hurting him. It's the closest I ever came to blows with somebody. It's still one of those things that when I talk about it, it makes me so mad that they put my wife on the ground, my 7-month pregnant wife on the ground with a toothbrush as a punishment for not making $50,000 in a week. Like what kind of insanity? And you would think that I would have just walked out at that point, right? And that would have been the end of it, but no. So things got kind of weird for me after that, where I was very upset with the org. I was very upset with the whole thing. And I was not really on board with being a staff member anymore. And then the LC one day came into my office and sat in front of me, and he hands me my contract. And I had thought that I was on a 5-year contract. Well, he hands me the contract and it was a 2.5-year contract and it was up. And I was like, oh, bye-bye. So I said, no, I'm not re-signing. And I wasn't quite ready to leave. And I basically decided to go work in estates. Just because I wasn't ready to rot off a staff, but I couldn't be an HCO anymore. I couldn't do what I was doing anymore. So I went into estates for about 3 months. And in that time, me and the estates manager, we painted the whole first floor. We did a bunch of renovations, and it was actually the most fun I had on staff, was just being in the States and taking care of the building and the work. But, and this was while my wife was still being the Dureg and the house. So then I got a call from a lady named Anita. Her last name is Apodaca, and I'm sure you know the Apodacas.
Oh, again, a big Scientology family.
Yes, Crystal Apodaca was actually the FR I've been talking about.
Crystal? Oh, Lord almighty. Crystal was at Asha with me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And her younger sister was like my DTS for a while when I was the tech sec. And then her bigger sister with the eye was in treasury at SPTV Foundation when I was there. There's a lot of Apodacas. I think they're also from Albuquerque, just like the Zombies.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Crystal was the FR this whole time. Double-hatted LC, let the guy on staff who stole the fucking central files. Oh my God.
Yeah, that was Crystal.
Oh my God.
And you know, Aaron, it's so funny because I look back and I was a baby. I was, 18 when I first joined staff. Crystal was older than me, but she was maybe 25. We were all just kids, kids. But yeah, so I get a call from her.
Crystal was the only good-looking Apodaca. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Well, didn't she have a sister? She had a couple sisters. Crystal had a twin sister.
If she had a twin sister, she wasn't in the Sea Org, not when I knew her.
She had a sister that looked just like her. I guess that I met.
I never knew that. I never knew that sister.
They were like a little Sea Org factory, man. They're just pumping out kids to send to the Sea Org.
That's right.
So I get a call from Anita.
So I didn't know Anita. See, there's all these Apodacas I never even heard of.
Yeah, and her last name was Zimmerman. I think she was married to a guy with the last name Zimmerman. Okay. And her post, she was the arrivals IC at ASHO. And she basically called me up and said, hey, how would you like to come train, get fully trained as an auditor at ASHO? And she goes, it'll only take 8 weeks. You'll be here. It'll be really fast. And then we'll send you back. And this kind of, she found me right at the right time. I was ready to leave, but I still felt like I wanted to help and I wanted to be a good staff member. So I thought, gosh, what's 8 weeks for me to go and get this training? Then I can come back and I can actually go back on post as either the COPOF or the DUR-INR, and I can really do my job and apply Scientology is how I looked at it at the time. So my dumbass with my 8-month pregnant wife went to LA for this training. And I was there. The first time I was there for 8 weeks. I was on course for 2 of those 8 weeks. Wow. Because there had been some sec check or something in my folder that needed to be resolved and they didn't have an auditor. So I was basically just sitting around being a can monkey for everybody else on the program while they all got to do their courses. And then I ran out of money and I said, hey, I have to go home and make some money and then I can come back. Wow. So I did that. I went home. Kara had the baby and I was there for a couple months. And then I went back to, I should back up here because there's something that happened. While I was in training, Kara got really, really sick when she was very, very pregnant, like almost 9 months pregnant. She had, there was an outbreak of what's called listeria, which is a bacteria in some ice cream. And 4 pregnant women actually died from this in Dallas. And she was hospitalized for it. But what happened is she got really sick. She went off post. Of course, the org starts coming after her saying she's out ethics and she's blowing and you need to handle her. I start getting calls that I have to recover Kara to post. I'm like, whoa, hold on. She was just in the hospital, guys. Like she's 9 months pregnant. Can we just start the maternity leave now? And the foundation org was actually cool. They were like, yeah, you can have your maternity leave, no problem. They approved her for, I think, 8 weeks off. The day org refused to sign the CSW. They just wouldn't give her time off. So she was basically considered a blown staff member now that she'd had the baby. I sent her to Austin to live with my parents because I wasn't there. I didn't want her to be alone with the baby. I wanted her to be taken care of. She went to Austin to be with my parents. I'm still in training. I spend another 6 to 8 weeks in training. And then I say, hey, I have to go back because we're out of money and I got to go do a couple jobs and then I'll come back and finish my training. At that point, I had gotten up through level 2. So I was a class 2 auditor. I went back, I went to Austin, I made the money. And then the week that I was supposed to go back to California to finish my training, we got a summons in the mail for Kara is being commented at LA for having been a blown staff member.
Oh my God.
So the summons, first of all, another example of how incompetent they are. There were tons of misspellings and errors and that kind of stuff. They said we had to respond to it by a certain day. Well, it got there 2 days after the day we were supposed to respond to it. So it's like, come on. So I call up the org and I go, what the hell is going on? Like I'm here, I'm trying to get trained to be an auditor. Why are you commenting my wife? Well, she's out ethics and she's blown posts and she's this and she's that. Okay, fine. So the comment was in LA. So I had to take all the money that I had just made and I had to fly with her and my son and I to LA for this comment. We get there and, it was just a total kangaroo court. They slapped a bunch of reports in front of her that had literally been written that week. Because the way they do these comment things, and there's something in Scientology that's like, there's the way it's written down on how you're supposed to do it, and then there's the way it's actually done. And never the twain shall meet. If you look at how the comment policy is laid out, you're supposed to gather evidence, you're supposed to call witnesses, you're supposed to do this. It's kind of like, if you read it and you just take the words, you can kind of imagine that there is some sense of justice that could be gotten from this thing. But in actual practice, what they do is when they decide that they're going to comment you, they already decide that you're guilty, and then they just manufacture evidence. Right. And so they manufactured all this evidence, and then they basically told her, if you don't sign another 5-year contract, then we're going to declare you an SP. So she signed another 5-year contract. Wow. At the same time, I went back to ASHO and I told them the situation. I met with a woman who, her name was Laura Kinderman. Do you remember her? Did you ever meet her?
Oh, yeah. She was the public MAA when I was there.
Yes. Yeah. And I told Laura what was happening, and she basically said, well, you have to come back to train. You're not leaving. And I said, no. I've got a plane. I'm leaving on Friday with my wife. And she goes, no, you're not. I said, listen, I didn't even bring my uniform. Like, I'm just here for this comment. I'm just explaining to you the situation. And she says, well, if you leave, then I'm going to comment you and I'm going to strip you of all of your certs. I was like, okay, fine, go ahead. She lost her mind on me, Aaron. I mean, she was literally banging her hands on the table, jumping up and down. At one point, she put her fingers in her ears and was going la 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 la, so she couldn't hear what I was saying. I mean, it was the weirdest interaction I'd ever had. Because I didn't immediately kowtow and do what she said, and I basically said, go ahead and comment me.
Wow.
You know, so we left that situation, and I was basically like, fuck this. We are not on staff anymore. I told them in no uncertain terms that we're both routing off staff, and we both went into the org and started our leaving staff routing forms right there.
Wow.
And man, I wish that had been it. I wish that was enough for me to just leave. I wish that had been it, but so much more. So that was 2015.
Okay.
We both moved to Austin. We lived with my parents for a while, and I start making plans for us to go do services in Cape Town. Because again, it's cheaper there. So I figure, okay, we can both get to clear if we go to Cape Town. So we paid them a bunch of money. We go over there. Long story short, I did attest to clear, but Kara didn't, because they basically wouldn't let her do it because they were saying she was a blown staff member and blah, blah, blah. Hmm. So I kind of want to jump ahead to where I started kind of putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
But do you have any questions on anything at this point?
No.
Okay. So we were in Austin, and the Austin Ideal Org fundraising had been going on for quite some time. My parents were big donors to the Ideal Org. They were, by the end of it, they had done New Civilization Builder, which is $1 million.
Wow.
My aunt also was a New Civilization Builder, and she was the ED for the foundation org.
Oh.
And then my brother, my youngest brother, was on staff. So when we finished our thing in South Africa, we come back, and now the pressure to donate to the Ideal Org was on, and it was hardcore. I mean, fundraisers every week. They had Austin actually had a pretty big field. I would say there was about 300 people in the Austin field, which is
300 active Scientologists.
300 active Scientologists.
Okay, yeah, that's
which
big.
Is big field. Eventually, they wore us down and got us to donate $100,000 to be humanitarians.
Wow.
And I'm going to explain how they did this in general terms, in kind of broad terms here. Jonathan Davitt set up this company to basically help Scientologists get loans. And what he would do is he would get money from a guy named Willis Pumphrey. Willis Pumphrey gave him $1 million for this company. And then he would go to an individual Scientologist, and let's say the Scientologist had a couple grand, or maybe $30,000 worth of debt. He would go, okay, I'm going to pay off your credit card. So he'd pay down the credit card entirely. They would then wait 3 months or whatever the time period was for the credit score to reflect that the loan had been paid off. And then they go apply for a bunch more money. So let's say somebody starts out, they have $30,000 in credit. They pay that off. They then get an increase on that credit card to $50,000. And they also sign up for 12 other credit cards. And now they have a total of, let's say, $150,000 worth of credit. Then you rack all of that up to give the money to the org. And that's how people were doing it. They were also doing this with bank loans. People were getting business loans to give money to the org. And this was all being run by Jonathan. So the total amount that was fundraised in Austin was $25 million. I think that about 15 million of that was completely done fraudulently, like bank fraud, credit fraud, because what they were doing is they were lying on their credit card applications. They would put down an income that was higher than the actual income they would made. They would lie on the phone to the credit card companies about the reason they needed the credit. They would give some kind of sob story about they're needing help with something, or they're helping their mother, or they're starting a new business or whatever, and then just rack up all the money and give it straight to the church. And this was done with pretty much everyone that donated did it this way. There were very few people that actually had the cash to donate. And Jonathan was making money as a result of this. So he would take a percentage. I can't remember exactly how he got paid, but he would take a percentage of what he got you. So if he was able to get you $100,000, maybe he took 10 or 15% of that, or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But he was getting paid very well for this. And he also had all access to all these people's credit cards. So anybody that was earning points on their credit cards, he was getting those points. And it was this whole weird situation. Let's see. I'll tie that into where I started kind of picking things apart. So this was the first thing that kind of started getting the gears turning for me. We finished the fundraising. We had raised $22 million or $23 million. We were done. We had a big party. We celebrated. Yay, the fundraising's done. Then they came back and they said, actually, we need another $3 million. And I was like, what? I don't understand. How can we be done? And then you find out that you need another $3 million. One of the things that they were fundraising for was the sign, the Church of Scientology Austin sign. And that the fundraising total that was raised for that was $1.5 million.
Wow.
This is a thing that's built in-house. and probably costs maybe $20,000 in materials and labor at the absolute high end. Well, we were charged $1.5 million for that sign. So that sort of got me going, this doesn't quite make sense. And then I got a hold of a piece of information, which was the total cost of all the steel for the building, which I think was about $325,000 to $350,000. At the time, I was working as a construction estimator. So I looked at this number and I said, hey, this is a data point that I can extrapolate from. And I did a full estimate for what the cost would be for the fundraising, for the renovations at least. My most generous estimates were that it should not cost, with the furniture, with everything, from adding a new floor, from tearing the thing down to its studs and rebuilding it, it should not have cost more than $10 million. And we raised $25 million.
Wow.
So that got me thinking, where's the rest of that money going, right? Then, let's see. Then I went to South Africa again with my mom. And my cousin, her name's Alex, she's the head of the Ideal Org fundraising in South Africa, in the Sea Org. And we met with her while we were down there, and she very happily explained that the prices of the orgs in South Africa had been cut down to 2/3 of what they were originally estimated. So Cape Town Org had a estimated cost, which had been set by international management's a decade before, of $25 million. Now they only had to raise $9 million. Port Elizabeth Org had a fundraising target of like 18 or 19 million, and then they only ended up having to raise 7 or 8 million. There was another org, same situation. And so then I started connecting these dots. I was like, oh, so you're just completely fucking us. You're just raising as much as you think you can get out of the field. Because if it only costs $9 million, then why did you give us a target of 25? And I asked her, I said, I'm confused. I don't understand. How can it's been, this price of 25 million was set when the program came out in 2004. How can it be a third of that price now? And it's been decades. How is it cheaper now? And she goes, oh, well, the estimators, they just messed up. And I was like, wait, so you gave us a wrong number and you were having us fundraise for this wrong number for all these decades. And now you're just cutting this down. This doesn't make sense to me. And she got kind of cagey about it and I didn't push on it. But that made me realize that the whole IG.org thing is just a complete scam. The only reason that they do it is to raise money. And what they do is they recruit from all over the planet, all over the world. They staff up the org. They make it look like it's a big thing. The org wins the birthday game in the first year that it's open because they get a 250-point bonus just for opening. Right. And then the org falls apart. And it just started retroactively making so much sense to me. I was like, oh, that's what happened in Dallas. That's what happened in every ideal org. It's just literally a con.
Yeah. What are they doing with the money?
I imagine it goes straight to Reserves, straight into the Miscavige. Isn't that his statistic? Amount of money in it.
It's either I think he can change what his statistic is. I remember Mike explaining that, he changed his statistic to one that basically, because property values are always going up, all he has to do is update the appraisal on the properties and his stat is up every week, right? Reserves or whatever. And it's like, but money for the sake of money? Like, I mean, it's not like I'm naive to the fact that, people like money, but it's like, the money belongs to Scientology. It doesn't belong to David Miscavige. So, and by the way, my questions here aren't even intended to push back on this. It's
that's
just
okay.
Like pointing out the absurdity of it is like fleecing people for money just for the sake of fleecing them for money when, like, the Philly org, it's been 22 years since they bought their building. It's been 20 years. It just sits there empty and vacant. Like, meaning my point is this: they're accumulating all that money, why not use it to open more of the ideal orgs? Why? Like, they're only halfway through the whole program. It's been 20 years already. Why let the program look so stalled?
That's an excellent question. And just to kind of flesh that out a little bit, they have enough money where they could just pay to open every ideal org tomorrow if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Okay. What they don't have is staff members.
Right.
So what they do with every ideal org, and I'm not being hyperbolic, is they rob Pete to pay Paul. When whatever new ideal org is opening. So there was Austin and Chicago, which opened recently, right?
Yeah.
People are pulled from all over the place. And then whatever the next new ideal org is, they take staff members from Austin and Chicago because they don't have anywhere else to take them from. So I think the reason they can't just flip a switch and open up all the ideal orgs is that would instantly reveal that they don't have enough people. So they do this thing where they move them from one place to the other. And it
would be too much of a cannibalization on their most recently opened ideal orgs.
Yeah, they literally just do not have the people. They're shuffling people around.
Right.
I mean, I think there's.
It's funny though. I mean, and here we are sitting here probably handling Scientology's problems better than David Miscavige seems to want to. There are still thousands and thousands and thousands of Sea Org members in the world who are basically twiddling their thumbs doing busy work that does not need to be done. I would think, especially since these ideal org buildings could at least be staffed with a skeleton crew of 50, 60, God forbid 100. You could take these Sea Org people at middle management and even continental management, they ain't doing shit, and the people still at international management, and you could just use them to open orgs for a little while. But there must be a reason Miscavige chooses not to.
No, Aaron, that is what they did.
Oh, okay.
The Columbus, Ohio was open with fully Sea Org.
That's right. And it still is.
Yeah. Orlando is fully manned by Sea Org.
Oh, I got to go to Orlando. Orlando's close enough. I got to go pop over to Orlando and meet these Sea Org members.
Yeah. I think Kansas City is also completely manned by Sea Org.
Huh.
So they literally just don't have enough people that they just start opening them as Sea Org orgs. That's further evidence of that problem. I'm curious. I don't actually know, but I'm curious about these orgs in South Africa, how much of it is Sea Org and how much of it is staff. I really don't know. Because there's not that many South African Scientologists.
Right.
Very few.
Wow.
Yeah. So let's see. Where do we want to go from here? Do we want to?
So where do we leave off there? Where do we get to in the story?
We got to.
I'm usually good at remembering, but I'm totally blanking.
Yeah, I'm blanking. We got to me figuring out that the ideal org program is basically just a con, that they're raising 2/3 more than what it actually costs. Oh, and the last thing I wanted to say is the reason they cut it down in South Africa is because when they lost the Chase Wave program, when they weren't able to do that anymore, they lost their fundraising strategy. So the only way that they can open new ideal orgs is by cutting those costs down. And I have a suspicion that management is also funding a lot of the renovations. I think they've lost their golden goose with the ideal org program.
Right. It makes me wonder. Flag is still doing pretty good as far as revenue. All the other orgs are crashing, obviously, have been crashed. It makes me wonder how the IAS is actually doing these days.
That is a good question.
I bet they're suffering.
I bet they are too. Like I said, I think they have maybe 8,000 people to even reg. I think it's like you've said it before. They've got their whales, and those whales are always donating enough money to keep the thing going.
Yeah.
All the other people are just chipping in enough to make it seem like it's still viable. But Scientology is being propped up by the few wealthy people that are in it now. That's really where I think it's at.
Right. Let's stay on this for a moment.
Sure.
Let's define what that even means to say Scientology's being propped up. What do you mean by that?
Let's imagine if you could take every 1% Scientologist, so all the wealthy people, and you remove them from the equation. I think Scientology would fall apart.
Okay, but let's stay on this.
Yeah.
I sort of have this idea that those 1%ers are already pretty much only supporting Flag. Those 1%ers aren't at PAC. Those 1%ers aren't at CCN. Those 1%ers aren't at the local class 5 orgs. Now, they are donating to the Ideal Org program everywhere around the world, like the Tom Cummins, right? The Tom Cummins, the Trish Duggan. But that money's not going to the local org. It's going right to management. So I guess what I'm kind of trying to, this is why I said, what do you mean when you say propped up? Is because Scientology is completely and utterly stalled. I mean, in fact, it's going backwards. But the only place in the world where Scientology even has the appearance of continuing to be operating at a high level is here in Clearwater, Florida.
Yeah.
And so is that what we really mean? The 1%ers are the ones helping Miscavige make it look like Scientology is a going concern.
That's kind of how I think about it.
Okay.
Because
I totally agree with that.
When I went to Flag as a public for services, it was the first time that I kind of felt like, oh, this is actually, something's really going on here. Because there was a lot of people around. And if you really start to count how many people, it's not that many. But
it feels like a lot, though.
It feels like a lot when you're a public and you've been in empty Ideal orgs and you've been in the middle of nowhere, and then you go to Flag and there's 150 people at a graduation or something. You're like, or a couple hundred people at a graduation. You're like, wow, this is incredible. But it's really not that many people. I mean, you know, that like that guy, the bookseller who said there's millions of Scientologists.
David, my good friend David. David Schilling.
Yeah, gosh, millions.
So it's true. The 1%, the Scientologists who are in the 1% are the ones funding David Miscavige's operation. And yet even that money, I would almost argue, isn't actually keeping Scientology afloat, depending on what we mean by that.
Yeah, what do we mean by that?
What does it mean? Does it mean Flag still exists? Of course Flag still exists. Does it mean orgs are opening? They're barely opening, but yes, the only reason any of them are opening their new buildings is because of the 1%er. It's not getting people into Scientology.
No.
And so I guess they're giving Scientology enough money to allow David Miscavige to make it look through property acquisitions and grand openings of new buildings like Scientology is expanding. But then let me ask you this, though. Let's say the 1%ers disappear. Doesn't Miscavige have enough money on hand to keep the illusion going until he dies?
I would absolutely agree he does. But the question at that point becomes, who's it for then? Right. I think Scientology is for the wealthiest people. That's really what it comes down to. It's to get the most money out of them. The Chase wave allowed them to suck all the money out of the lower class, the people that could only do it on credit. And now those people don't have access to money anymore. So they're not going up the bridge. They're not doing anything. Those are the people that are expected to join staff to facilitate the people that actually do have money. So it becomes this, it's always been this way in that the staff have always been this poor lower class who exist there to service the public. Now that disparity is just becoming greater.
That's right. They took the people who joined staff because they couldn't afford to do Scientology, and they saddled those people with hundreds of thousands of dollars of credit card debt.
Yes.
It's so disgusting.
It is. I mean, I'll tell you, Austin had over 100 humanitarians. At some point, Jonathan Davitt had to start a Facebook group just for the humanitarians who were committing or who were filing bankruptcy to try and prevent them from filing bankruptcy.
And for the viewers, the humanitarian status is when you've given at least $100,000 to your local new building fund.
Yeah.
So he had to start a Facebook group for just those people that were going into bankruptcy, huh?
Just to try to keep them from filing bankruptcy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you see Jonathan Davitt tried to privacy strike and copyright strike my video about all this week?
I did.
Poor Jonathan Davitt.
What a foot bullet.
So when Davitt finally got into trouble, it wasn't even for all these financial irregularities. It was for spending his money on escorts, right?
That's right.
Living the good life in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jonathan's a character. He'll get his comeuppance one day.
Yeah. You know, he was one of these kids that grew up in the cadet org, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
You know,
that's the thing, is like
it's hard to imagine him being an honest to God, true blue believer, as opposed to someone who just figured out how to sort of succeed in the ecosystem.
I think you're right about that. Jonathan kind of bullshits his way through it. He doesn't really believe it fully, but he knows how to get what he wants out of Scientology. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
okay, so the ideal org stuff, the So how did you actually, let's fast forward to this. Let me know if there's something else early you want to fast forward to.
Sure.
How did your exit out of Scientology itself begin?
Okay, so I have to explain a little bit about the situation that happened with COVID in order to illustrate that. So Scientology's response to COVID was to lose its collective mind. They started using this chemical called Decon 7, which is okay. It's a fine chemical. It's an industrial grade cleaner, and when it's applied correctly, when it's used for its in a proper way, there's nothing wrong with it. But Scientology was abusing this. When COVID first happened, all the ideal orgs on the planet, actually shut down for a period of 7 months, which for me at the time as a devoted Scientologist was the biggest crime that you could have possibly committed. In fact, there's some reference where Hubbard says that closing an org for 1 day results in 6 months of lost stats. And I said, well, then how many years of lost stats is it if you're closed for 7 months? So I started writing reports about the orgs being closed and how this wasn't okay and blah, blah, blah. And the heat started coming down on me for that. I started getting in trouble for being in disagreement with these protocols. At one point, my wife and I got called into the org, and we were shown these videos that the church had produced that basically showed, like, they had these fogging machines. I'm sure you've seen the B-roll where they spray with these fogging machines, and they have these hoses that are spraying Decon 7. And they had this little 3D graphic where they showed COVID-19 particles on a door handle. And then they showed the particles like replicating and growing and moving across the wall, and like, oh, here we bring in our Decon 7, that kills it all. And I'm watching this video, and the CDC at this point had already come out and said, hey, this is airborne. It doesn't survive on surfaces. So wear a mask. Don't worry about the cleaning the surfaces. But the org was pushing it that it was that it could be replicated and that it could grow on surfaces, which just wasn't true. Another part of the video showed that they wanted you to spray down your groceries with Decon 7. They wanted you to clean the inside of your car with Decon 7. They would have had you gargling with it if they could have. And then after we watched these videos, we were supposed to sign this thing saying that we would follow the protocols exactly. And I said, I'm not signing that. This is ridiculous. The other thing that they did, and this kind of gets into a lot of Scientology. Gosh, I have to think about this for a second. So in Scientology, there's this concept that the only reason somebody gets sick is they're connected to a suppressive person. It's one of the most hammered in things in your head in Scientology. The only, I'm trying to remember what the quote is verbatim. It's any illness or accident in
all illness, accident, sickness to a greater or lesser degree stems directly and only from a PTS condition, which means connected to a suppressive person.
Yes. So when the COVID protocols came out, one of the things that they stipulated, they said, if you get sick, then the reason you got sick is you violated the protocols, not because of a suppressive person, but because you violated the protocols. And what started happening is any staff member that got ill with COVID was being COMEV'd because they had, quote unquote, violated the protocols, because the only reason they could get sick is they didn't follow the protocols, because the protocols are 100% effective. And I mean, this is just, it's insane. Yeah. So I started writing reports about that. At some point, they sent an interrogatory to the Austin Ideal Org, the Austin Org, where they were asking people questions about, is anybody telling you to violate the protocols? Have you observed anybody violating the protocols? I mean, it just became a total witch hunt. And I had, let's see, how do I want to explain this? When I was on staff, I mentioned that I worked in estates for a couple of months.
Right.
I had stayed friends with the estates manager. He was a Sea Org member. but he was working at a classified org, so he had a lot of freedoms. He had his own cell phone, he had his own iPad, and we would talk regularly. This is kind of an unusual situation to be in contact with somebody like this. But when the org shut down, he was made to stay in the org and basically fog and disinfect the org daily, even though the org wasn't open. So for 7 months, he was spraying surfaces, wiping surfaces, disinfecting for no public, for nobody being there. And he was explaining to me that the chemical solution was actually stripping the varnish off the wood. They were cleaning it so much.
Wow.
So just completely ridiculous. His name was Eddie. Eddie and I were talking about this, and we had voiced our disagreement with the protocols to each other, which again, this is kind of a no-no. This is called nattering in Scientology. You're not allowed to speak about things that you disagree with, even if they're valid. But Eddie and I started talking about this stuff. And so eventually he got called back to CLO from Dallas org. And when he got there, they locked him in solitary confinement. They called it quarantine. And they said, you're going to be in quarantine because he had some kind of medical issue going on. I think he had parasites or something, or who knows what was going on. They never sent him to an actual doctor. I think they sent him to a chiropractor or something. But he had some kind of medical situation going on. And instead of sending him to a doctor, they just put him into what they called quarantine. Quarantine was basically being locked in the Blue Building. They had a whole floor of the Blue Building closed down just for that. He had to spend all day in that room, and they would fog the room with Decon 7 3 times a day. So they would come in with these big machines that blow this fog everywhere and saturate the room with that 3 times a day, and then they would put him back in that room immediately. I went and I read the safety instructions for the product for Decon 7. It said that you're supposed to have the room cleared for 6 to 8 hours after you fog, and they were putting him back in the room immediately. This was making him sick. So he started having symptoms of poisoning, basically, from the Decon 7. And then that perpetuated his quarantine. So he wasn't allowed out of quarantine because he was showing symptoms of being sick, but he was showing symptoms of being sick because he was being poisoned by this Decon 7. And I was kind of pointing out, it's like, I don't understand how you don't have COVID. The other thing, you had to take a COVID test every single day. It's like, okay, so you don't have COVID. You've tested negative for it every day. You have some other thing going on. They won't let you out of quarantine. Why are they spraying the room? You're not an infected person. What point is there in disinfecting a room that has no COVID in it? Do they think it's going to spontaneously manifest? It's like, that's not how this works. Things got worse and worse and worse for him. And this kind of eventually led me to asking questions that I just wasn't getting answers to from the org. And eventually I went online. I think the first video I ever watched was an interview with you and a gentleman named, I believe his name was Nick.
That was the first video, the first interview I ever did on this channel.
Okay. Yeah. So I watched that video and my heart was beating out of my chest the whole time. I was terrified. But I watched it, and then I just started going down a rabbit hole, watching more of your interviews, watching other people's interviews. And very quickly I realized something is up here. But there's these kind of, you come out of it in stages. It's kind of like, you're peeling the layers of the onion. I think it was Arnie Lerma that had those 10 steps of leaving Scientology, where you realize there's something wrong with management, but you still believe in the technology, and then eventually you realize the technology is bad, and then eventually you realize Hubbard's crazy and always has been, and so on. And so when I first started coming out, I was in that first stage where I was like, okay, so what I would do is I would find videos specifically that validated the preconceived idea that I had, which was that management was crazy. So I would I would find something like that. I wouldn't let myself watch anything about the OT levels or about Clear. If somebody said the word Xenu, I would quickly speed through the video so I didn't have to hear it. And I just I had convinced myself that I was just investigating Scientology externally, and that I was applying Scientology by watching these videos. And I had it in my head at the time that I would basically, if I learned what was going on the outside, then I could fix it from the inside, which is just silly. But that was what I thought at the time. At the time, I was also traveling for work. So I was in this weird situation where I was basically away from home 6 days a week. And I didn't tell my wife that I had started looking at stuff online. And I think at this point, I want to illustrate, I want to talk about what my mental health diagnoses are now that I actually have them.
Let's do it.
This will illustrate kind of what I was going through. Okay, so I'm autistic. I have ADHD. I have OCD. I have narcolepsy. I have Tourette syndrome, and I'm schizophrenic. So I like to say I'm like a clown car full of mental disorders. My body's like a clown car full of mental disorders.
What was the last one? Oh, schizophrenic. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't fall asleep on me.
Yeah, exactly. So in this period, there was a period of about 6 months where I started going down the rabbit hole and watching all these videos and figuring out what was really going on. And this sent me into a deep psychosis because I was unmedicated. I was undiagnosed. The way my schizophrenia presents, the best way I can describe it, this is not exactly what it's like, but it's like a low dose mushroom trip at all times. And I just thought that I had super spiritual Thetan powers my whole life. I didn't realize that these hallucinations and these things being, these delusional things being beamed into my head was schizophrenia. I just thought I was a big Thetan or something. So completely delusional. And I started basically, when I started watching all this stuff, it sent me into psychosis. I couldn't rationalize with the fact that everything I believed was a lie. I'd come to the terms of the fact that management was crazy. But it was just all too much for me. And the traveling and being away from home, it sent me into a state of psychosis. And then what happened is the job that I was doing, I had been working in my parents' company, and my dad had secured a contract with this big organization to do a bunch of work for them. We were supposed to do work for them for several years. After 6 months, they pulled the rug on us and dropped us. We actually moved from Texas to Georgia in order to be closer to the company we were working with. So when they pulled the rug on us, we basically came to Georgia and we had nothing. We had nothing. My parents had managed to get a house and we were living with them. I was still going through this stuff with Scientology and watching all this stuff and going down this rabbit hole. I still hadn't told my wife about it because I was so afraid that she wouldn't be on the same page, and that if I told her, I would lose everything. I would lose my family. I would lose my wife, my son, everything. So then,
at this point in the story, what year is it?
Oh gosh, let's see. 2021.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
So then we had a conversation with some friends of ours. I won't mention the names because they probably won't want me to, but you know them.
I remember you told me, yes.
Yeah. And we were on the phone with them. It was me and Kara and the two of them. And at some point, one of them goes, "Hey guys, do you think this is all bullshit?" And Kara goes, "Yes, I do." And it was the relief I felt to realize that she was actually on the same page. And then I found out that she had kind of been going through her own thing for the past 6 months. So we were independently kind of going through our own experiences and coming out of the cult together, just separately and not telling each other about it. And then when we told each other about it, it was just like this weight lifted off of me. We actually went to see our friends. They lived in Colorado at the time. And we had a great time visiting with them. We had some other friends that we knew in Austin came up, and we were basically all just in the phases of coming out of Scientology in one stage or another. So we had this big meet up and talked about Scientology and talked about everything. And that was a big shift for me because at that point I was like, okay, management's crazy and this is clearly a cult, but I still believed in the technology. I had done so much auditing that I had built my whole sense of identity around all these past lives that I had supposedly had. And it was very hard for me to give up my sense of identity based on those supposed memories I had. It was this incident out in Colorado that kind of shifted me to going, oh, okay, this is all fake. I need to start figuring out how to undo all this. Right. So when we came back, that might lead into where we talk about my alter ego.
Let's do it.
So how do we want to talk about this? Do you want to
Yeah, I'll give a little bit of an intro.
Okay.
So I forget how much. Well, are we still in 2021, or are we now in 2022? When we're talking about your alter ego,
I think late 2021, early 2022, if I'm recalling
okay,
correctly.
good. Well, all of a sudden, someone comes out and starts sharing information with Tony Ortega, and then Chris Shelton, and then me as well, called The Insider. And The Insider did a great job of concealing their identity, but also it was very clear that the information that they were sharing was well sourced and high level and very accurate and up to date. And YEAGER here was the insider. And I don't remember if you were in touch with me at the same time and as early as you were in touch with Tony and Chris, or if you decided to get in touch with me later on. I don't remember if that was simultaneous or if it was subsequent, but all I know is that I was in touch with you for an extended period of time as the insider. And then when you reached out to the SPTV Foundation later on, I was also, at no point did I realize when I was in touch with YEAGER Bezuidenhout, that YEAGER was the same person I'd been in touch with as the insider. I had no idea. It wasn't until a year into it that you were kind of like, you've probably put the pieces together by now that I was the insider. And I was like, no, I had not put those pieces together. I feel like that would have come up by now. And it's funny because when I was in touch with you as the insider, I didn't care at all who you were. It made no difference to me whether I knew your real name or your real identity. And it never even occurred to me to ask you, like, what's the point of being anonymous if I'm going to try to pierce that veil just for my own sake?
Yeah.
It was clear you were real. I didn't need to know who you were, right? Okay, so yeah, YEAGER is the insider, you guys.
So what everyone doesn't know too is when I wrote all that stuff, I was deeply in psychosis. I was running at a mile a minute. And
wow.
it was an interesting situation because what usually happens is people come out of Scientology, they take a couple years to deconstruct from everything, and then they tell their story. And at that point, it's kind of ancient history as far as things go. What I did that was kind of unique is I was reporting on things that were actively currently going on in Scientology. And I think that's what made the article. So I wrote, I don't even remember how many. I think maybe 6, maybe 8 articles that were posted on Tony's on the Underground Bunker. And they covered things like the Chase Wave, the Ideal Org scam, the COVID protocols, and a bunch of other things. And I was just losing my mind in my garage, typing all this stuff out, sending it to Tony. And my goal with it was I wanted to prove that you could speak out anonymously and not have it come back on you.
I remember that. In fact, for anyone who doesn't know this, you even did at one point a videoed recorded interview with Chris Shelton where you did not show your face and your voice was like one of those robotically heavily modulated, like, you know, DEA undercover interview type things.
Yeah.
So at no point did Chris even know who you were, right?
No.
But not for lack of asking.
Not for lack of asking. Chris really wanted to know. He really wanted to know who I was, which made me a little suspicious. But I mean, Aaron, of everybody I reached out to, you were the only person who completely respected my anonymity. You did not ask for my identity. You took, you verified the information on the basis of its veracity, and that was it. And it was funny because when I, as YEAGER, contacted you, I actually, as the insider, I was like, hey, I have this friend. He needs some help. Can I put him in touch with you? And then I contacted you as YEAGER. Because I was still
that's another reason I never would have suspected. You did a good job. You did a good job.
But I was kind of like, I didn't know if you bought that story or not, And then once I stopped, once I connected to you as YEAGER, everything that I was leaking to you just came from YEAGER at that point. So I figured you'd figured it out,
No, see, I'm not as smart as I think I am. But let me ask you this. You describe yourself during that period as being deeply in psychosis, but your writing wouldn't indicate that or dictate that. What were you experiencing that makes you describe yourself that way at that time?
So there's positive and negative symptoms of schizophrenia. And some of the positive symptoms would be like hallucinations, delusions, disorganized thinking. I also have OCD. So it was kind of a combination of having these OCD intrusive thoughts and then vividly hallucinating from my schizophrenia. So when I would sit down and write that stuff, it felt like I was high. And it felt like this information was being beamed into my head, and I just had to get it out. So I say that to illustrate, like, to me, it wasn't some courageous act or something. It was, I had to do it. I was completely losing my mind. And I was like, the only way that I can process this is by writing it and getting it out. And so it was very therapeutic for me to be able to release all that stuff. But I was deeply, deeply in a state of psychosis where my thinking and everything was just completely disorganized.
For my own understanding, like, does this translate into your life in ways like, when you describe yourself that way, I think of someone who can't even leave the home, like can't get out of bed, can't work, can't anything. Is that like what's going on at that time?
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. Yeah. I became a recluse for about 3 years. If I left the house, I would have a panic attack constantly.
Wow.
And I couldn't go to the grocery store without having a complete mental breakdown. And
how old are you now, if you don't mind my asking?
I'm 32 now.
Okay. Incredible. It wasn't, nobody would have, I mean, nobody reading your writings would have guessed that.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. When I go back and I look at it, sometimes I see it when I read it. And what was interesting too is back then I was still using I hadn't stripped myself of the Scientology language yet. So I still used a lot of Scientological terms and stuff. And I kind of cringe when I read some of those articles and just the way that I wrote it. But I'm glad I did that. And I think it was a good thing. I hope that it encouraged other people to speak out that felt maybe that they couldn't, because if they thought if they spoke up, they could be, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I remember in your writings, you saying that one of the things you hoped to accomplish by reporting on and revealing the things that you were doing, or that you were reporting and revealing, while making it clear you were still in the organization as a member in good standing, was to show other people that you can do this.
Yeah.
You can do it without getting caught. And, you know, and you did that. And so even now, like, even though you're not still using the alter ego, like even now, I think people finding out that you were able to accomplish that for all that time without anyone figuring out who you were. Yeah. And you were even able to be in touch with me simultaneously as Yeager and the Insider, with me not knowing that was the case, and me not even trying to find out who the Insider was. I think that will help people.
I hope so.
Yeah.
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 So, yeah. So maybe it'd be good to talk about kind of how the SPTV Foundation helped me and what you guys did, and where I am now compared to where I was. And I'm going to try not to cry through this part of it, but no promises. Okay. When I came to you and I asked for help, Aaron, I was at the end of my rope. I was suicidal. I was completely wrapped with just OCD. I was an agoraphobe. I couldn't leave my house. I couldn't do anything. I tried getting a job, and I worked in this construction company for 5 days, and I just felt so pathetic and unable to do anything, because I was just constantly hallucinating all the time and constantly having these intrusive thoughts. And my head, I described it as it's like my brain was in a blender. It felt like every part of me was on fire. So I mentioned that I have Tourette's. You might have seen I'm kind of ticking with this thing I'm doing with my jaw.
Oh, I thought you were chewing gum.
No, that's one of my tics. But what I used to do was
chewing gum.
I'm not chewing gum.
Oh. Okay.
So what I used to do was, and I can't really even demonstrate it, but imagine going like this with your head as fast as you can, 1 to 2 times a second, all of your waking day.
Oh my
So I would
goodness.
violently shake my head back and forth all the time. It put so much stress and pain on my neck from doing that, that I was just in constant pain as well.
Yeager, how did this work in Scientology?
I was told from a very young age that I was like this because I had done something in a past life and that I had pulled it in, and that I was like this because I was a bad person. And so I believed that I was a monster, and that I was just, I thought of myself as a monster, and that I deserved to be in pain because I had done something that I didn't know about in a past life. And that was constantly reinforced by everybody in my environment. I didn't get any access to medical care. My parents, I'm very fortunate to have wonderful parents who tried everything they could except taking me to a doctor. You know, they couldn't take me to a psychiatrist. It would have been so against their belief system. And so they took me to all kinds of people, but never actually got me in front of a psychiatrist. So because the Tourette's was kind of the most glaring thing about me, because I was shaking my head all the time like that, people didn't notice the autism and the ADHD and the OCD and the narcolepsy and the everything else. Because the glaring thing was me shaking my head like that. So, you know, there's this concept in Scientology of a hidden standard, which is like, how do you explain that? If you have an idea that you're supposed to get something specific out of auditing, like you're supposed to actually get results from it, then they call that a hidden standard. It's this weird thing where it's like they promise you the moon, but if you think that what they're promising you is the moon, and then you ask for the moon, and then they say, oh, well, you have a hidden standard, you're connected to a suppressive person. So my hidden standard was always that I would get help, that I would eventually cure my Tourette's with Scientology. And that's what I was told all the time. Every time I'd ask about it, they would show me this reference called Handle It with Scientology. And they basically just say, well, keep going. If you just keep going on the bridge, eventually this will get handled. And it wasn't handled at Clear. It wasn't handled at any level, because it's not something that Scientology is capable of handling. And so I was just treated like a piece of shit by the people around me. So when I came to you, I was really at my wit's end, and I remember the first appointment I had with the psychiatrist, and where I just explained everything. I laid it out, and I just bawled through that interview. And she explained what's going on and what's happening with me and these various different conditions and why they seem to be affecting that way. And then she put me on medication. And the first time I took that medication, I practically just cried all day because I felt okay for the first time in my fucking life. You know, I've never been okay, man. I was in pain for my whole life, and everybody treated me like shit, and I was bullied ruthlessly, and I didn't, you know, I felt like such a fucking alien monster. And when I saw a psychiatrist and I started seeing a therapist, it's like I felt like a human being for the first time. And I can't even explain what that feels like. You know, I sit here today and I'm medicated for my schizophrenia. I still have hallucinations, but barely. My OCD is practically in remission. My Tourette's is very well managed. everything else is well managed, and that's because of you and your foundation, man. And I think I would have taken my life if I hadn't got that help. I don't think I would have made it. And every day I was so close to ending it. And now, like, it's a night and day difference, man. I feel like a person. I feel like I can get through it. I feel I'm sorry. You know, my therapist told me that I had the experience that a child with these conditions 150 years ago might have had.
Because of the lack of care?
Yeah. And, you know, because of the lack of the care, my conditions were worsened. Like, Scientology made it worse for me, not better. And in every way, it made my Tourette's worse. It played into my delusions. Like I said, I thought I had superpowers. I didn't realize I was just hallucinating. I thought I was seeing through the veil of reality, and that this was, I thought my mental illness was evidence that Scientology worked. Because it's so crazy, man. So you guys supported me through about a year of therapy and all my psychiatric care. And, you know, it was those two things in combination, because the psychiatric care is like the medicine was like the fuel, but the therapy was the vehicle for me to get where I'm at today. And if I didn't have the fuel, then I couldn't have gotten down that road. So the combination of the medicine and the therapy, I mean, in the 8 or 9 or 10 months that I was in therapy, I handled things in my life that I had been trying to handle with Scientology for my whole life, and never got anywhere with it. You know, they gave me actual tools and things that I can use. And the hardest part of therapy is, honestly, it's Scientology steals so much from psychology that the hardest part of therapy was kind of just getting over myself and going, this is not Scientology. This is something else. And, you know, you have your general kind of talk therapy, but then you also have these specific modalities where, like, you have a specific, it's called ERPT for OCD. So exposure response prevention therapy. And through that, I was able to slowly expose myself to things and get my agoraphobia under control. I mean, Aaron, I couldn't go to the grocery store without having a full-blown panic attack and meltdown where I felt like I was dying. And when I started therapy, my therapist encouraged me so I do jujitsu. I've been doing jujitsu for quite some time. And he encouraged me to start teaching classes.
Oh, wow.
And when I tell you, like, the first month of doing that, I would step into the class, step on the mat, and just sweat like profusely, because I was so terrified, and I would just have a panic attack through the entire thing. And then eventually it's kind of like a muscle, you know, you build up a tolerance, and you realize that you're not in danger and that it's okay. You can do this thing. And now I find a lot of enjoyment in it. And I teach jujitsu every week. That's something that I never thought I could do.
Right.
Yeah, man. Sitting here today, I feel like a person. I'm learning to love myself. I don't use shame to motivate myself anymore. I don't put myself down for having been in a cult. I'm working to move on and move up from it. And that's because of the SPTV Foundation and the help you guys provided.
Well, it was our pleasure. And yeah. And that's only possible from the support of all you viewers out there who've been watching SPTV from the beginning and supporting this channel and supporting me and supporting the foundation. And it's your support that allows us to help people who are leaving Scientology. And in many cases, people who've already left Scientology. In your case, like we spent tens of thousands of dollars helping people who've already left Scientology get therapy of various kinds. I think you might be the only one who literally on your way out of Scientology needed this particular type of help. And I remember when I first got your email describing everything you were going through, because your story also included having been in Scientology for so long and having grown up in it and having been on staff for so long and having, I remember thinking, but Scientology doesn't even let people like this be in Scientology. How is this possible? Like Scientology like gets rid of people with these problems. Like, how is this possible? And it's amazing to me that part of what you were suffering from almost reinforced the idea that Scientology was real and Scientology was working. And it's like so dangerous.
The worst thing you can do for a schizophrenic person is play into their delusions. And that's all Scientology did, was play into my delusions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
It really is our pleasure. It's my pleasure. I mean, I always say, like, I do this channel because I have fun with it. I do this channel because I love trolling Scientology. But what really gives it value is being able to use it as a platform to, in any way I can, keep people from getting sucked into Scientology and to help people who are leaving Scientology. And the SPTV Foundation is what provides a vehicle to be able to provide a very certain kind of help, which is behind the scenes, private, confidential help. Really any help that is needed to help people on their way out of Scientology. So to be able to help you and other people in your family, in my opinion, has been our greatest success story. And that's why I've been wanting to do this interview for a while. And I'm glad you're ready.
I also want to say to the world, this interview has happened because I originated it. I asked for it. Aaron has never once pushed me to do something like this. I basically texted him the other day and I was like, fuck it, let's do it, you know? And he was like, let's do it. But the process, like I want to say, if you're watching this and you need the help of the foundation, the process of asking for that help is so easy and so non-judgmental and it's like, you don't ask for I don't know how to put this. You guys made it so easy to ask for help, because it's so fucking hard to ask for help sometimes. And especially coming out of a cult. And you guys just made it so easy to ask for help, and we're so supportive at every step of the way. And like, it was incredible. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. You know, there were times where I was just sitting in therapy and I was just thinking about, gosh, like, I can't believe that there's a group of people out there who's been through the same thing that I went through and are now helping people like me. It's kind of, I don't know, it's weird to say, but it's like, you don't have to do this. You could be doing something else. And the fact that you're here doing this, like you are saving people's lives. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure I'm not the only one. But I also know that you'll never pressure those people to speak out. So like, if you guys are watching, just know that like there's so much going on behind everything with the foundation and the people that he's helping. Donate if you can, because he may not be able to talk about it, but he's saving lives for real. For real.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Because you had started posting some of your story on the Scientology page on Reddit, a journalist had reached out to YEAGER interested in writing about his story, and that story was going to include how the SPTV Foundation had helped. And after months and months of dragging on, they had just told YEAGER, I think it was yesterday morning, that their editor told them they weren't going to move forward with the story. By the way, that's why the mainstream media sucks balls, and YouTube is where it's at.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can't believe it. After dragging on for this whole time, they just killed the story. He's like, well, because there was a time that I think you and I were about to do something, and then due to some family dynamics, we decided to hold off. And then there was the article, and then you're like, hey, after the article comes out, then let's just do it. And then anyway, so let me ask you this. We're going to take half a step backwards, because so much of leaving Scientology is family drama, and it sounds like your family has been large donors to Scientology and everything. Is there anything about this that's okay to talk about? Because I haven't even asked you privately this question. Like, is this family in the process of blowing up? Is there anything that you want to talk about here?
I'll say I'm very fortunate to have wonderful parents. They have always supported me and had my back and loved me. Sometimes Scientology has gotten in between or in the way of that, but in the end, they've always been on my side, and I'm very fortunate to still be in contact with my parents. They still kind of believe in Scientology itself, but recognize that the organization itself is malicious and dangerous. And then my youngest brother is still a staff member at the Austin org, and he's basically disconnected from me. I'm fortunate to have my wife in my life and my son. I lost my extended family, my cousins, my aunts and uncles, a lot of my friends, but the people that are closest to me, I'm very fortunate to still have as a part of my life.
That's great.
Yeah. Which took a lot of effort on my part, I think, to maintain that. I had to basically come out to my parents. And I was kind of, so I'm the eldest of 3 boys, and I was kind of the spearhead for all of our Scientology stuff. I dropped out of high school. I went and studied it. That encouraged my brothers to do the same. That encouraged Kyle to be on staff, because I was on staff, my youngest brother. So I felt kind of responsible for all of this. And I feel like I did a lot of work to try to reverse that or undo it with my family and my parents.
That's great.
Yeah.
I feel spent.
Me too, man. I cried it out. I haven't had a good cry in a long time.
Let's
Aaron,
see.
I think it'd be fun if we did this again. It'd be fun to just me to review my notes and kind of dial down onto one specific incident or something, because this was just kind of the whole broad thing. Yeah. But there's stuff we could talk about, like Jonathan Davitt or some of the other stuff that went on in Austin.
Yeah. We can do this as many times as you want. George has starred a whole bunch of comments from the live chat as we've been going on. You want to?
Oh, yeah.
We can tackle some of these.
Absolutely.
All right, let's see. This is you. It's easier to say than it looks written down. Bezeidenhout. Yes. Okay, Hazel. Thinking of 4th of July, are Scientologists supposed to leave behind their nationality, like their religion, to be Scientologists, or do they acknowledge their own holidays even for like 5 minutes? Okay, so this is talking about like national holidays. So like, for example, like if you're a British Scientologist, do you celebrate the national holidays in Britain or in South Africa? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
They're not like particularly important, but yes. Here's Jenna. Jenna's in the other room. Hi, everyone. Excited to hear YEAGER's story.
Thank you.
Okay, I just realized. Oh, Northern Girl soup training. Oh, it's course supervisor training to run the course room, to run the academy in the org where all the major courses are being done. Chelsea, what is the birthday game? The birthday game is the competition that Scientology orgs play against all the orgs in the world, about 135 of them or whatever, for who can put up the best statistics. There's weekly standings, quarterly standings, and annual standings. And it's really orgs competing against each other for who can put up the best numbers for the week or the quarter or the year. Okay, JMT. Is Yeager still married to his first wife?
I am. We've been married for 14 years. She's the love of my life.
There you go. Eric Rader, I believe there are less than 5,000 public Scientologists on the bridge worldwide. Could be.
Yeah.
Ren again. How long has Yeager been free of the cult? How do you, when do you, in your mind, what date do you associate with leaving Scientology?
I'm kind of a couple minds about that. I feel like I left in my head in 2021, but then I really didn't feel like I was out of the cult until I had deconstructed enough to stop using the language, to stop thinking like a Scientologist, to stop shaming myself every time I had a sniffle because I must be connected to an SP. So that took years, and I still think I'm in that process. So am I free of the cult? I don't think I'm free of the cult yet, but I'm out of it in my mind, and I'm working hard to deconstruct from everything.
Right. I'm sure some of the viewers are like, stop using the language. What are you talking about? We couldn't understand half of this interview.
Yeah, it was hard. I had to slip back into it for a minute.
Well, it's impossible, especially if you're talking to another, ex-staff member.
Right.
There's certain science, but like when you say stop using the language, you mean like in everyday life, knowing how to describe something without using Scientology language, right?
Exactly.
Not how to talk about Scientology without using Scientology language. So, but let me ask you this. You said, I don't think I'm free from the cult. And I know what you mean by that. And I also know what you mean. Like, I think I mentally left Scientology in 2009, but I don't identify as being out of Scientology until I got declared in 2014.
Sure.
But like, when do you consider, when you say I'm not free from Scientology, I know what you mean, but surely you feel like you're out of Scientology.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm out of it in all aspects. And I would say probably 2023 is when I really drew that line in the sand. And I said, I'm fully out. Body and mind.
SP Chef, wonderful seeing another survivor story, Aaron. Thanks, Yeager, for telling your story and for being here, darling.
Thank you. That's the gentleman that you've interviewed before, right?
Samuel Zuli?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Kimmy, one of the many reasons I left Scientology was the bigotry I was reading from L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah, a lot of that.
It's funny. I have always kind of pushed back against this idea, and maybe it's because in order to really see something, how do I say this? I never felt like anything I read or heard in Scientology was racist. And people go, but what about when he says a black South African's withholds read a certain way on the e-meter? I go, he didn't say all black people. He just said black South Africans. and I don't know what, I almost feel like I by the way, my point isn't right now that there's something wrong with Kimmy's comment, because there isn't at all. But I'm certainly not saying L. Ron Hubbard wasn't a racist, because he clearly was, or he wouldn't have used the word wog for ex-Scientologists. But I'm curious if that resonates with you, since you're at least of my generation or younger. So any blind spots that I have, you might be as inclined to have had them.
Sure.
Because it's possible I just wouldn't have recognized it as racism or bigotry.
Did
how did you process it?
I think I'm kind of on the same page. I was so ignorant of what even racism was, that, there's a lot of Hubbard's racism is what I think would be called a microtransgression, where he's not outwardly racist. He's not saying something explicitly racist, but the way he talks about people of other races He clearly thinks of them as lesser.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Right. Well, and even in, actually, now that you mention it like that, even in his, and also there's a really good chance that a lot of the stuff that was a little harder back in the days was edited out by the time it got to you or me.
Sure.
But even the stuff that they're open about, and it's called something like Letter to Black People. Is it? They actually have it framed at the Harlem Org, or it's at reception, like open letter to Black people. It probably used to say the Negroes, but it really is almost like it's condescending, isn't it?
It's completely condescending, and
Right.
it's a micro. It's looking down, it's putting them as lesser, it's making them as lesser. And it's like, oh, you poor people, we can save you. So come to us because that's the only way you're going to be saved. And it's kind of the same way like Mormons look at Black people, whereas they see them as lesser. They think of them as being tainted or something. And it's just a cultural thing.
This is why I'm dying to interview a member of the NOI, who, by the way, I just got hooked up on Instagram with a fantastic former member of the NOI that I'm going to do an interview with. Because if anyone is qualified to comment on any like baked in racism in the Scientology text, you'd think it would be a member of the NOI, right?
Yeah.
So I'm dying to do that interview.
That would be great.
I just feel like I had so many like kind of like blind spots on what would be bigotry or what would be racism. Cause like I didn't grow up that way. I grew up in a suburb of Philly that in retrospect was very anti-Semitic, but not like anti-Black, if you will.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like and so and also as a Scientologist, we're all taught we're all spiritual beings. We don't have ethnicities. We don't have races. We don't have, your body doesn't matter at all. Your body is considered irrelevant. And so depending on which parts of Scientology you believe in the most, like racism isn't even a thing. Like if you truly believe in Scientology, you wouldn't be if you truly believe that we're all spiritual beings that don't have a gender or a race or a nationality or an ethnicity, being racist doesn't even make sense, right?
Right.
And yet I knew tons of racist people in Scientology.
I think
I just never blamed Scientology for their racism.
Well, it's kind of like, okay, this is a great analogy.
Yeah.
I had this big white fluffy couch. You ever seen those pillow couches? They sell them on Amazon, where it's like a boneless couch is what they call it. You know what I'm talking about? Where it's just
I'm not sure that I do, but I'll look it up while you're talking.
Okay.
Fluffy white boneless couch.
Yeah, look it up.
Give me some sick shit.
Yeah, show the people what we're talking about. So you see.
No.
Okay. So
oh wait, couch. This is actually exactly what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm. So
at home, y'all can just Google yourselves fluffy white boneless couch.
I had one of these and I posted it on Facebook Marketplace to sell it. And every single person that responded was like the exact same person. They had different names and looked different and that kind of thing, but it was like the same archetype of person, right? I think Scientology is like the couch in that it attracts a certain type of person, especially first generation. Does that make sense? So it's like Scientology has a culture that if you are a racist person, you're going to fit in well there. You're going to do well.
Interesting.
So it's not that like Hubbard necessarily baked racism into it, but there's this inherent bias towards anybody that isn't white in Scientology. And that is culturally accepted and culturally propagated.
I mean, hell, it does. I mean, have Erica Zombati as a Sea Org mission IC showing up and just throwing around the N-word like it's a normal thing to do in front of the Black person that she's talking about. But we will agree though. You found that shocking behavior.
Appalling.
And inexplicable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
So Scientology is racist, but it's not like openly racist. It's like a micro racism. It is racist though.
Yes. All right, here we go. Renee Ferreira. Scientology has just renovated an old building in Port Elizabeth. They are advertising heavily on the local radio station. We are not happy. Well, this is just the continuation of the Ideal Org, the fraudulent program that Yeager's been talking about. Renee, what you can take some solace in knowing that just because they renovated an old building and are running ads on the radio, they are not succeeding. That building is empty. Those ads are paid for by some sucker who donated a bunch of money, and they are not working.
Yeah.
MG Hobby Room. Yeager's story is a good example of why Scientology is a criminal organization, very similar to the mafia.
Absolutely.
Arkansas Flamingo. That is so inhumane to make a pregnant woman scrub grout.
Yeah.
Yeah. Church of Scientology is like being from a small southern town. Everyone knows everyone.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And if there was 10, 15 million Scientologists in the world, that would not be true. Could you imagine just being a Jewish person and you found out someone's like, oh, my friend in New York is Jewish. And you're like, oh, Bob. There's about 10 or 15 million Jewish people in the world. And it's like, could you imagine knowing every Jewish person in your city just because you're Jewish? No. But a Scientologist knows every other Scientologist in not only the city sometimes, but the state. That's how small it is. Okay, Powers V2. That Erica Zombati lady sounds like she has a future at international management. It's actually funny. New Year's new name. Are his parents still in, and are they at the Austin org? How would you answer this question?
I would say my parents still believe in the core concepts of Scientology, but they're not in. They're not as out as me, but they recognize it for what it is.
Are they in that world where they're in good standing, but they're okay if they become not in good standing?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I dare say the pressure is going to ratchet up in that regard after this interview.
We'll see.
Okay. Jenna Miscavige says, thank you so much to the anonymous donor of $2,500 directly to the website. That's great. Thank you. And for anyone watching that doesn't know, this live stream is programmed as a fundraiser for the foundation. So that's why there's no like super chat button. If you see a donate button, 100% of that money goes to the SPTV Foundation. YouTube doesn't take their cut and they pay all the processing fees. So that's the benefit of doing that. Oh, Powers V2. Did he work with the Cardone Credit Repair crew? I don't know if he means you or Davitt.
I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with what that is.
Okay, me neither, really. New Year's new name. Yeager and his information gives me renewed hope that Scientology will fail sooner than later.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Selena. Oh, Selena Fan. Para siempre. Which means for life. This has been a really interesting live. Just when I think Scientology can't be more ridiculous, I hear something absurd. Yeah. Stephen Mark Katzman. Catching up. So cool and sad for me to hear this craziness. Thanks, Yeager and Aaron, for sharing. Northern Girl. This was such a brave conversation.
Oh, thank you.
Sue Adams. So interesting to hear how really awful this organization and it dawning on this man. Yeah. Northern Girl. Question. Yeager, do you still have family inside who you have had to disconnect from?
I do.
Well, you mentioned your younger brother, right?
Yeah.
And I guess you did answer this question a little bit ago. Yeah. Arkansas Flamingo. Oh my gosh, the horror of thinking that you are at blame for a condition.
Yeah.
Feral Cheryl on the use. We got you, Yeager.
Thank you.
Carrie McCauley. So glad you escaped. Thank you for sharing your story. Lucy Katz. Thank you, SPTV Foundation, for helping Yeager, of course. Eric Rader. We hear you. I think that's in response to you. Janie Bersol. What an awesome human you are, Yeager.
Oh, thank you.
Renegade. Do we all realize how close? Yeah, everybody can see that.
That's gonna make me cry. We've cried enough.
Old Frizz, you should be so proud of yourself, Yeager.
Thank you.
Terry, thank you for becoming a channel member. And
You did this.
This is Gabrielle. Thank you, Gabrielle.
Man.
This is Marisa. Yeah. Thank you, Marisa. And I appreciate you for everything else. Marisa, everything else. Carol, thank you for becoming a channel member. All right, that's what we got. We're all done.
Awesome.
Let's leave it at that. Let's leave it at that.
Okay.
Thank you guys for watching. Much more to come with Jaeger in the future. And please help support the SPTV Foundation so that we can keep helping more people. Okay. Thank you guys. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe